the sun over Alexandria in 150 CE does not merely shine, it dominates. It turns the Mediterranean into a sheet of hammered silver and the white marble of the Great Library into a beacon that can be seen for leagues. But here, within the high stone walls of this private courtyard, the world narrows. The roar of the great harbour, the shouting merchants, the creaking of cedar hulls from Phoenicia, the heavy thud of grain sacks from the Nile, fades into a distant, rhythmic hum. It is a ghost of a sound, easily ignored. Instead, your world is defined by a single, shimmering line of silk and the soft, rhythmic click, click, click of organic perfection meeting organic perfection. You are a jeweller of the Roman Empire at its zenith. Before you lies a shallow cedar tray lined with dark blue linen. Scattered across it are hundreds of pearls, harvested from the warm waters of the Erythraean Sea. They are not the uniform, bleached spheres of a modern factory. They are alive. Some are the colour of a winter moon, others possess a faint, rosy glow like the first blush of dawn. A few rare specimens shimmer with a metallic silver undertone. To handle them is to handle time itself. Each pearl represents years of silent growth deep beneath the waves, slow layering of nacre around a grain of irritation. Now, they sit under your steady hands, waiting to be unified. The air in the courtyard is thick and sweet. A trellis of jasmine hangs heavy over your workbench, the white petals shivering slightly in the breeze that rolls off the sea. The scent of the flowers mingles with the sharp, clean aroma of the cedar wood and the faint, metallic tang of the copper tools resting near your elbow. There is a fountain in the centre of the court. It is a simple limestone basin where water trickles from a bronze lion's head. The sound is a constant, cool, liquid trill, a psithurism of water that creates a sanctuary of focus. This is the art of the slow. In an empire built on the thunder of legions and the scale of colosseums, your task is the opposite. You are working on a scale of millimeters. You are threading the tears of the gods for a noble woman of the Serapion district. If a single knot is uneven, if the tension of the silk is too tight, the necklace will not drape against the skin like water. It will bunch and protest. You pick up a needle, a sliver of polished bronze, incredibly fine. You take a breath, feeling the warmth of the Egyptian afternoon settle into your shoulders. The world outside can rush toward its future. Here, there is only the needle, the silk, and the pearl. You select the first pearl. It is a baroque shape, slightly teardrop, intended to be the weight at the very end of the strand. You roll it between your thumb and forefinger. It is cool to the touch, but it warms quickly against your skin. You look at the hole drilled through its centre. It is a marvel of precision. It's achieved with a bow drill and a tip of diamond bought. You bring the needle up. Your vision is sharp, narrowed down to the tiny dark aperture of the pearl. Click. The pearl slides down the silk thread. It hits the starting knot with a sound so delicate it is felt more than heard. It is the first heartbeat of a new creation. The journey of 1,000 pearls begins with this single, steady movement. You reach for the next one, your fingers moving with the muscle memory of a lifetime spent in the service of beauty. As the sun shifts, casting long, golden fingers of light across your workbench, you realize that in this moment, you are not just a jeweler, you are a weaver of moonlight. Each bead is a story of the deep sea, secret whispered by the tides, now being bound by your patient hand. The silk thread is strong. You feel the slight resistance as the needle passes through the second pearl, a perfectly round specimen that reflects the green of the vine leaves above. This work requires a stillness of the soul. In the bustling streets of Alexandria, men bargain for lives, for wheat, sand for power. But here, the only currency is patience. You pause to adjust your stool, the woven reeds creaking softly. A colourful bird, a kingfisher from the marshes, perches for a moment on the edge of the fountain, dips its beak into the cool water, sand then vanishes in a flash of azure. You smile, the movement barely reaching your eyes, sand return to the tray. The third pearl follows the second, the rhythm is established. The world is at peace, the fourth pearl is smaller, a delicate accent to the larger stones that will form the centerpiece of this necklace. As your fingers graze the surface of the cedar tray, you feel the subtle variations in texture. Some pearls are as smooth as polished glass, while others possess a slight, natural ripple, a fingerprint of the oyster that birthed them. You think of the divers in the red-tinted waters of the south, men who hold their breath until their lungs burn, searching for these hidden treasures. They risk the jagged coral and the silent shadows of the deep, so that you might sit here in the safety of a scented garden, turning their danger into grace. The silk thread feels like a living thing in your hands. It is resilient, having been spun and twisted by master weavers in the heart of the city. You guide it through the eye of your bronze needle with a practiced flick of the wrist. There is a specific tension required for this work. Too loose, and the pearls will rattle like dry bones. Too tight, and the strand will lack the fluid, snake-like movement that makes a pearl necklace so seductive against the throat of a Roman matron. The sun has climbed higher now, and the shadows of the jasmine leaves dance across your workbench, creating a shifting mosaic of light and dark. A stray petal falls, landing softly among the unthreaded pearls. You leave it there for a moment, a temporary neighbour to the gems. It is a reminder of the ephemeral nature of beauty. The flower will wilt by dusk, but these pearls, if cared for, will endure for centuries. They will be passed from mother to daughter, hidden in jewellery boxes during times of strife, and brought out to gleam under the torchlight of 1,000 banquets. You're not just making a piece of jewellery, you're constructing a legacy. Click. The fifth pearl joins the line. This one has a distinct golden hue, likely a gift from the warmer currents near the coast of Taposiris Magna. It catches the sunlight and seems to glow from within, as if it had swallowed a spark of the Egyptian sun and refused to let it go. You pause to wipe a bead of sweat from your brow. Even in the shade, the heat of Alexandria is a physical presence, a warm weight that slows the blood and encourages contemplation. The fountain's song changes slightly as a breeze picks up, the water splashing against the limestone rim with a more hurried tempo. From over the garden wall, the distant cry of a street vendor reaches your ears, selling roasted chickpeas and honeyed dates. The sound is muffled, stripped of its urgency by the thick stone barriers of your sanctuary. You reach for the sixth pearl. This one is perfectly spherical, the kind of gem that would command a small fortune in the forums of Rome. You hold it up to the light, marvelling at its luster. The surface is a mirror, reflecting a tiny, distorted version of your own face and the green canopy above. You wonder about the woman who will wear this. Will she appreciate the hours of stillness required to bring these stones together? Or will she see it only as a mark of status, a shimmering shield of wealth to wear to the theatre or the temple of Isis? It doesn't truly matter. Your satisfaction comes from the process, the alignment of the holes, the steady hand, the marriage of silk and sea. The seventh, eighth, and ninth pearls follow in quick succession. The rhythm is hypnotic. With each addition, the strand grows longer, beginning to drape over the side of your hand. You feel the collective weight of them. Pearls are surprisingly heavy when gathered together, a solid, cool mass of calcium and moonlight. You begin to tie a tiny, almost invisible knot between each pearl. This is the mark of a master. The knots ensure that if the silk should ever break, only one pearl will be lost to the floor. It also provides the necessary spacing for each stone to be seen in its full glory, preventing them from grinding against one another. Your fingers move with a dexterity that looks effortless but is the result of years of calluses and squinted eyes. You remember your apprenticeship in the humid workshops of the Canopic Way, learning to drill these holes without shattering the brittle nacre. The bow drill had been a temperamental beast, and many a fine pearl had ended up as dust on the floor before you mastered the pressure. Now, the needle is merely an extension of your intent. As you reach the 10th pearl, you notice a slight imperfection, a tiny pit on the underside. You rotate it carefully, ensuring that the floor will face inward, hidden against the wearer's skin. Even nature has its scars, and part of your craft is knowing how to celebrate the perfect while respectfully concealing the broken. The courtyard feels even quieter now, the midday lull having settled over the city. Even the birds have retreated to the deeper shadows. You are alone with your work, a solitary creator in a world of millions. The click of the pearls becomes the heartbeat of the afternoon, a steady, reassuring pulse that speaks of order, patience, and the quiet triumph of human skill over raw material. You pull the silk taut, check the knot, and reach for the next pearl, the tray still full of possibilities. The 11th pearl is a masterpiece of ivory light, possessing a depth of luster that seems to pull the gaze inward. As you slide it down the saffron-tinted silk, you find yourself contemplating the geometry of the strand. A necklace is not a straight line. It is a circle in waiting, a curved embrace designed to follow the contours of a human throat. Each pearl you add must account for this eventual arc. You select the 12th stone, slightly larger than the previous few, as you begin the slow transition toward the center of the piece. The click, as it meets its predecessor, is sharper this time, a crisp note in the quiet air of the courtyard. You realize that your breathing has synchronized with your hands. Inhale as the needle finds the aperture. Exhale as the pearl slides home. This is the meditative state of the craftsman, where the boundary between the tool, the material, and the maker begins to dissolve into a singular purpose. The scent of the jasmine is joined now by the aroma of baking bread drifting from a neighbor's kitchen. It is a humble, grounding smell that reminds you of the world beyond these walls, a world of hunger, labor, and basic needs. Yet what you do here is also a need, though, of a different kind. Humans have always craved the beautiful, the rare, and the symbolic. In Alexandria, a city built on the intersection of Greek intellect, Egyptian mystery, and Roman power, beauty is a language everyone speaks to wear. These pearls is to signal one's place in the cosmic order. You carefully tie the next knot, the silk looping over your fingernail before being pulled into a tight, secure bead of friction. The silk is resilient, but you treat it with reverence, knowing that the oils from your skin and the salt in the air are its enemies. You keep a small piece of linen nearby to wipe your fingertips, ensuring no moisture dulls the radiance of the nacre. The 13th pearl is followed by the 14th, then the 15th. The strand is now long enough to coil in the palm of your hand like a sleeping serpent. The pearls are warming, absorbing the heat of your body and the ambient temperature of the afternoon. There is something profoundly intimate about this work. You are touching every surface that will eventually rest against another person's skin. You are the intermediary between the cold depths of the ocean and the warm pulse of a living neck. You pick up a pearl that is unusually iridescent, its surface playing with the spectrum of a rainbow in the sunlight. It shifts from a pale violet to a shimmering seafoam green. Such a stone is rare and requires a specific placement where it can catch the light most effectively. You decide to save it for the grouping near the collarbone, where the wearer's movement will maximize its play of color. The 18th pearl is a delicate specimen, possessing a skin so thin and translucent that it seems to vibrate with the reflected light of the courtyard. As you slide it onto the thread, you think of the immense journey this tiny object has taken, from the dark, silent pressure of the seabed to the bustling markets of the Red Sea coast, and finally through the desert caravans to your bench here in Alexandria. It is a survivor of the vastness of the world. You carefully execute the knot, your fingers working with a precision that defies the slight tremor of fatigue beginning to creep into your hand. You must remain vigilant. A single lapse in concentration could lead to a snag in the silk, a flaw that would haunt the entire piece. This is where the discipline of the craft truly reveals itself. It is not just in the beautiful moments, but in the endurance of the focus, the ability to maintain the same level of care for the 50th pearl as you did for the first. As you reach the 21st pearl, you decide it is time for a brief moment of reflection. You hold the growing strand up, letting it dangle against the dark linen of your tray. The gradient of size is beginning to take shape. The pearls are slowly increasing in diameter as they move toward what will be the center of the necklace. The effect is one of organic growth, as if the necklace itself is a living vine of light. The click of the stones as you settle them back down is a reminder of the reality of the material. They are hard, dense, and permanent. In a city like Alexandria, where buildings are torn down and rebuilt, where libraries burn and empires shift their borders, these small spheres of calcium carbonate offer a rare kind of constancy. They are pieces of the eternal captured and tamed by your hands. If you're enjoying this journey back to the ancient world, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell to join us for more moments of historical peace. Your support helps us keep these stories alive, much like the traditions of the craftsmen we honor. The 22nd pearl joins the line, and with it comes a shift in the light. The sun has passed the zenith and is now beginning its long, slow descent toward the great sea. The shadows of the courtyard have lengthened, stretching like dark fingers across the tiles. The jasmine scent becomes more intense as the air begins to cool slightly, a heady perfume that fills your lungs and steadies your heart. You pick up the next stone, a rare pink-hued pearl that seems to hold the warmth of the fading sun. It is a magnificent specimen, perfectly round and without a single blemish. You handle it with extra care, knowing that this will be one of the sister pearls that will flank the great central gem. The silk passes through its heart with no resistance, a perfect fit. The 23rd and 24th pearls follow, their click, click, forming a soft percussion against the backdrop of the trickling fountain. You are now entering the heart of the work. The pearls are larger here, their weight more substantial, their luster more commanding. You find yourself looking at your own hands, the skin tanned by the Egyptian sun, the knuckles slightly thickened from decades of delicate labor. These hands are the bridge between the raw wealth of the earth and the refined elegance of the aristocracy. You feel a sense of pride, not out of vanity but out of a deep respect for the lineage of makers you belong to. From the goldsmiths of the pharaohs to the jewelers of the Ptolemies, you are a link in a chain as strong and as vital as the silk thread you currently hold. The 25th pearl is a deep, creamy white, almost like the color of aged marble. It provides a grounding contrast to the more iridescent stones. As you tie the knot, you notice a small gecko scurrying along the wall near the jasmine trellis. It stops, its throat pulsing with breath, its golden eyes fixed on the shimmering treasures on your bench. For a moment, you and the creature are frozen in a shared appreciation of the stillness. Then, with a flick of its tail, it is gone, disappearing into the shadows of the vines. You smile and reach for the 26th pearl. The necklace is nearly half finished now. The curve of the strand is becoming more pronounced, a graceful arc that mimics the horizon of the sea. Each stone is a promise kept, each knot a testament to your patience. You feel the warmth of the afternoon lingering on the stones, a gentle heat that makes the work feel less like labor and more like a conversation with the elements. You are weaving the story of Alexandria, one pearl at a time. The 27th pearl is a stone of remarkable character, possessing a slightly flattened base that allows it to sit perfectly against the curve of the thread. As you guide the needle through its core, the sound, that familiar comforting click, seems to resonate deeper within the quiet courtyard. You are now approaching the apex of the necklace, the section that will rest at the very front, drawing the eyes of every guest at a Roman banquet. The pearls here must be flawless. Any deviation in color or size would break the spell of symmetry you have worked so hard to maintain. You reach into the tray and select a gem that feels particularly cold. It is a stark, brilliant white, polished by the tides until it reflects the world like a convex mirror. You can see the tiny, distorted reflection of the bronze lion's head fountain on its surface. You pull the silk through, the thread humming softly as it slides against the nacre. The 30th pearl marks a milestone in your afternoon. The strand is now heavy enough that it requires both hands to move comfortably. You lay it out on the dark linen, admiring the progress. The transition from the small, delicate stones of the clasp to the magnificent gems of the center is seamless. It looks like a ripple of light frozen in time. You notice a small merchant ship in the distance, visible through the gap in the courtyard gates, its single square sail catching the late afternoon sun as it heads toward the Pharos. It is a reminder that Alexandria is a city of movement, a gateway between the East and the West. While your work is stationary, it is part of that global flow. The silk came from the Far East, the pearls from the South, and the gold for the clasp, resting in a small bowl nearby, was mined from the mountains of the moon. You are the point of convergence for the entire known world. As you reach for the 31st pearl, your hand brushes against a small bowl of olives and cheese you set aside earlier. You take a moment to eat, the sharp, salty flavor of the feta and the richness of the oil providing a brief grounding distraction. This simple meal is a ritual of the bench, a way to reset the senses before the final push toward completion. You watch a dragonfly, its wings a blur of iridescent lace, hover over the fountain. It darts with a speed your hands can never match, yet your hands create things that will outlast 1,000 generations of dragonflies. You return to the tray, your fingers finding the 32nd pearl with ease. This one is large, a true union pearl, nearly 12 millimeters in diameter. It is the first of the 3 central giants. The weight of this pearl is significant. It feels like a solid, smooth pebble of moonstone. You examine the drill hole one last time, ensuring there is no debris that could fray the silk. The click as it meets the 31st pearl is a solid, authoritative sound. It anchors the left side of the centerpiece. You tie the knot, the most important knot so far, with a double loop for extra security. The silk stretches slightly under the weight, and you adjust your grip to compensate. You are now at the very heart of your creation. The world outside the courtyard has grown even quieter, as if the city itself is holding its breath to watch you place the final central stones. The golden hour is approaching, that magical time when the light of Alexandria turns everything it touches into treasure. You reach for the 33rd pearl, the absolute center, the king of the tray. It is a sphere of pure, unadulterated radiance waiting for its moment of crowning. The 33rd pearl, the monarch of this collection, sits alone in the center of the tray. It is a rare find, perfectly spherical and possessing a luster that seems to trap the very essence of the Egyptian sun within its layers of nacre. You pick it up with a sense of reverence. This single gem is the reason for the entire necklace. The other stones are merely a supporting cast for its singular beauty. As you pass the silk thread through its heart, you feel a slight resistance, a whisper of silk against stone. The sound it makes when it finally slides home and meets its neighbor is a deep, resonant click that seems to echo off the stone walls of the courtyard. You secure it with a series of careful, intricate knots, ensuring it remains the immovable center of gravity for the piece. The weight of the necklace now feels balanced, a perfect equilibrium of elements gathered from the corners of the earth. The shadows have stretched across the workbench, turning the cedar wood a deep, burnt orange. The fountain's trickle sounds more pronounced now that the city's daytime clamor has begun to soften into the murmurs of evening. You look at the 34th pearl, which will begin the descent back toward the clasp. It must perfectly match the 32nd pearl in size and sheen to maintain the visual harmony. You find it a twin in every sense and bring the needle up. The repetition of the movement has become a form of prayer. Your mind is clear, stripped of the anxieties of the day, focused entirely on the tactile reality of the silk and the gem. You are creating something that defies the chaos of the world, something orderly and perfect. As you work, you think of the generations of jewelers who came before you in this city, those who served the Ptolemies and those who now serve the Roman administrators. The tools have changed little and the pearls not at all. You reach for the 35th pearl. The symmetry is holding. With each stone added to the second half of the strand, the necklace begins to look like a finished thought. You can visualize it now, draped over the neck of its future owner, catching the flickering light of oil lamps during a symposium. It will be a conversation piece, a symbol of taste as much as wealth. You tie the knot, the silk pulling tight with a satisfying snap. The air is cooler now, and a soft breeze carries the scent of the sea, more pungent than before, mixing with the fading aroma of the jasmine. You feel a deep sense of contentment. The meticulous nature of the work has acted as a balm for the spirit. In the act of focusing on the small, you have found a way to understand the large. Every click is a reminder that beauty is built one small step at a time, through patience and the refusal to rush. The 36th pearl follows the 35th. You are moving with a renewed, steady pace. The end of the tray finally in sight. You notice that the fountain has attracted a small sparrow, which splashes briefly in the basin before shaking its feathers and flying toward the roof. You stop for a moment to watch it, resting your eyes. Constant focus on such small objects can be taxing, and the shift in light requires you to lean closer to the bench. You adjust your posture, feeling the stretch in your neck and shoulders. The physical toll is real, but it is a price you pay gladly. To work with such materials is a privilege that few in Alexandria enjoy. Most are destined for the fields or the docks, but you have been granted the gift of the bench. The 37th and 38th pearls are joined to the strand. The click, click is like a countdown toward the completion of the circle. You are back to the mid-sized stones now, the curve of the necklace wrapping around your hand as you hold it. The color remains consistent, a creamy, lustrous white that seems to glow even as the natural light begins to fail. You consider lighting a small oil lamp, but decide against it for a few more minutes. The twilight of Alexandria has a specific quality, a violet-blue hue that makes the pearls look ethereal, as if they were made of light rather than stone. You reach for the 39th pearl, feeling its smooth surface with your thumb. Sleepy History with Tales is a sleep history storytelling platform created for entertainment, inspiration, education, and the promotion of positive emotional values. The 40th pearl is a testament to the ocean's subtlety. It is not as large as the central stones, but it possesses a rose overtone, a faint pink blush that only reveals itself when the light hits at a specific angle. You slide it down the silk, feeling the thread vibrate as it passes through the narrow channel. The click as it settles into place is soft, a gentle greeting to the pearls that have already found their home. You are now well into the second half of the necklace, recreating the gradient of the first half in reverse. This requires a sharp eye. You must frequently compare the pearl in your hand to its counterpart on the opposite side of the strand. They must be sisters, if not twins, to ensure the weight of the necklace hangs evenly against the chest. You tie the knot with the same deliberate pressure you have used since the very first bead, your muscles acting on a memory that predates the afternoon. The evening air is beginning to stir the purple hangings of the courtyard's inner chambers. You hear the distant, muffled sounds of a household waking up for the evening meal, the clatter of bronze plates, the low voices of servants, and the smell of roasting lamb seasoned with cumin and garlic. These sounds anchor you to the present, even as your work connects you to the deep past of the earth. You reach for the 41st pearl. It is cool, almost cold, having sat in the shadow of the cedar tray's rim. You roll it between your palms for a moment, warming it, a small gesture of care for the material. The needle finds the hole with practiced ease. Click. The sound is a punctuation mark in the silence of your focus. You realize that your mind has entered a state of flow where time no longer moves in hours, but in the distance between one pearl and the next. The 42nd and 43rd pearls follow. You are now returning to the smaller, more delicate stones that will lead back to the clasp. These are harder to handle, requiring a lighter touch. You use a pair of fine silver tweezers to pluck them from the linen. As your fingers, though steady, feel massive compared to these tiny treasures, the knots between them must be even smaller, nearly microscopic, so as not to distract from the flow of the nacre. You work with a jeweler's loop occasionally, checking the integrity of the silk. The thread is holding strong, its saffron dye appearing almost golden in the deepening twilight. You think of the woman who will receive this. Perhaps she is a daughter of a Roman prefect, or the wife of a wealthy grain merchant. She will wear this at weddings, at festivals of Serapis, and perhaps one day It will be the only thing she takes with her if she must flee a sudden turn of political fortune. Pearls are portable wealth, a silent insurance against the volatility of the world. The 44th pearl is joined by the 45th. The tray is looking emptier now, the dark blue linen showing through the gaps where the gems once rested. You feel a strange sense of melancholy, the kind that always accompanies the end of a long task. For hours these pearls have been your companions, a puzzle to be solved, a rhythm to be mastered. Soon they will be a finished object, a commodity to be sold and worn. But for now, they are still yours. You take a moment to adjust your workspace, moving a small bronze weight to hold the completed end of the strand in place so it doesn't slide off the bench. The fountain continues its rhythmic splashing, a sound that has become the heartbeat of your afternoon. You look up at the sky. The first stars are beginning to prick through the violet canopy above Alexandria. The Pharos lighthouse will be lit soon, its massive fire guiding ships into the harbour just as your focus guides the needle through the stone. The 46th pearl is almost identical to the 4th pearl you threaded hours ago. The symmetry is nearly complete. You feel a surge of quiet energy, the second wind of the craftsman. Your hands feel lighter, your vision sharper despite the waning light. You reach for the 47th stone, a tiny lustrous bead that marks the beginning of the final stretch. As you tie the knot, you find yourself whispering a small prayer of thanks to the gods of the craft, to Hephaestus for the tools and to the Nereids for the bounty of the sea. The work is almost done, and the masterpiece is nearly whole. You can already feel the smoothness of the finished strand, a circle of moonlight ready to be clasped around a neck. The 48th pearl is so small it feels like a grain of heavy sand between your fingertips. As you guide the bronze needle through its center, you feel the finality of the task approaching. This part of the strand, near the nape of the neck, requires the most flexibility, so you ensure the knots are firm but not suffocating. The click is now a sharp, tiny staccato, a diminutive echo of the deep resonance produced by the central giants. You are weaving the final inches of the silk, and the pattern of the gradient is perfectly mirrored. You look down at the tray and see only a handful of pearls remaining. The dark blue linen, once crowded with shimmering orbs, now looks like a night sky after the stars have begun to set. You feel the cool evening air of Alexandria pressing against your skin, a refreshing contrast to the stagnant heat of the midday. The city is transforming, the smell of salt is sharper now, and the distant sounds of lutes and laughter begin to drift over the walls from the neighbouring villas. The 49th and 50th pearls are added with a swift, confident motion. You have reached a state of perfect harmony with your materials. The silk thread, though thin, feels as strong as a ship's cable in your hands, and the pearls feel as though they belong together, as if they had been searching for one another across the depths of the sea. You pause to look at the entire length of the necklace. It lies coiled on your bench like a serpent of pure light. Every knot is identical, every spacing is precise. You take a moment to reflect on the nature of this work, how it requires a total surrender of the ego to the demands of the object. To be a jeweler in 150 CE is to understand that you are a servant of beauty, a quiet architect of the exquisite. If this moment of ancient craftsmanship has brought you a sense of calm, we invite you to subscribe and share this story with those who seek a peaceful escape into the past. Your engagement allows us to continue weaving these historical tapestries for you. The 51st pearl is the penultimate stone. You handle it with a lingering touch, realizing that once the final knot is tied, the intimate conversation between you and these gems will change. It will move from the realm of creation to the realm of commerce and display. You slide it down, and the click is bittersweet. The fountain's song seems to slow down, or perhaps it is just your perception, your own heartbeat settling into a deep rhythmic calm. You check the alignment one last time. The necklace is a perfect circle of moonlight, a testament to the hours of focus in this shaded courtyard. You reach for the final pearl. It is a tiny, bright bead, chosen specifically to sit against the gold of the clasp. As the needle passes through the 52nd pearl, you feel a profound sense of completion. The journey that began with a single teardrop-shaped stone hours ago is now a finished cycle. You prepare the final series of knots that will anchor the gold toggle. Your fingers move with the same reverence they held at noon, refusing to rush even though the end is inches away. The violet sky of Alexandria is now peppered with brilliant stars, and in the distance you can see the first faint glow of the Pharos fire beginning to pulse against the horizon. The necklace is ready. It is no longer a collection of individual treasures. It is a singular work of art ready to grace the world. Sleepy History with Tales combines the power of AI to reimagine fictional historical tales, bringing peace, relaxation, and positive emotional values to our listeners. The final pearl rests against the golden toggle, and now comes the most technical stage of the afternoon, the terminal knot. This is the structural anchor that must withstand the constant movement of a wearer's head and the friction of fine fabric. You pick up the gold clasp, a small, elegant bar and ring cast in the shape of two entwined dolphins, a tribute to the sea that provided the pearls. The metal is cool and heavy, polished to a mirror finish that reflects the flickering light of the single oil lamp you have finally decided to light. As you loop the silk through the eye of the gold dolphin, the smell of the olive oil from the lamp, earthy and warm, replaces the fading scent of the jasmine. You pull the thread taut, checking the tension one last time. There must be enough play for the necklace to remain fluid, yet enough strength to ensure it never fails. You use a small bronze pick to guide the silk into a series of hidden hitch knots. These are tucked inside the hollow base of the clasp, invisible to the eye but essential to the soul of the piece. As you pull the final knot tight, you feel a distinct snap of the silk settling into its permanent home. It is done. You take a small, razor-sharp iron blade and trim the excess thread, leaving only a fraction of a millimeter, which you then carefully singe with the heat of the lamp's flame to seal the fibers. The smell of burning silk is sharp and brief, a tiny sacrifice to the completion of the work. You lay the necklace out on the dark linen tray, straightening it with your fingertips. In the soft amber glow of the lamp, the pearls seem to have changed. They no longer look like individual stones. They look like a single continuous ribbon of light, a captured moonbeam resting on your bench. The courtyard is now entirely cloaked in the deep velvet of an Egyptian night. The fountain is a silver ghost in the shadows, its splashing sound now the loudest thing in your small world. You lean back, your muscles stiff and protesting, but your heart is light. You watch the way the light plays across the finished strand. The center pearl, that magnificent monarch of the collection, dominates the view, its deep luster drawing the eye and holding it. You find yourself thinking about the journey this necklace is about to begin. Tomorrow it will be wrapped in fine silk, placed in a box of inlaid ebony, and delivered to the villa in the Brucheon district. It will be unwrapped with gasps of delight. It will feel the warmth of wine and the pulse of music. It will witness the intrigues of the Roman court and the quiet prayers in the temple of Isis. But for tonight, it is still here with you. It is the silent witness to your patience and your skill. You pick it up, letting it drape over your fingers. The weight is substantial and comforting, a cool, smooth presence that feels like the very definition of quality. You realize that your hands, though tired and stained with the day's labor, have created something that will likely outlive the current emperor, perhaps even the empire itself. In a world that is often loud, violent, and chaotic, you have spent your day in pursuit of a quiet, perfect harmony. This is the jeweler's reward, not just the coins that will be paid for the work, but the knowledge that for a few hours you are in perfect alignment with the beauty of the natural world. You begin to tidy your bench. The cedar tray is cleared of its blue linen, the bronze needle is placed back in its felt-lined case. The tweezers and picks are arranged in their designated slots. Order is the hallmark of your craft, and you return your tools to their places with the same care you used to thread the pearls. The oil lamp flickers as a moth dances around the flame, its wings casting giant, erratic shadows against the stone walls. You blow out the lamp, and for a moment the world is pitch black until your eyes adjust to the starlight. The Pharos lighthouse is visible now, a steady rhythmic pulse of fire on the horizon, guiding the travelers of the sea just as you have guided the treasures of the sea into this new form. You pick up the necklace one last time before placing it in its temporary velvet bag. feeling the last of the day's warmth still radiating from the stones. The work is finished and the night belongs to the shadows. The transition from the workbench to the storage bag marks the final intimate contact between the maker and the made. As you lower the strand into the soft velvet, you feel the collective weight of the pearls shifting, a subtle fluid movement that mimics the gentle swell of the Mediterranean. The silence of the courtyard is now absolute, broken only by the rhythmic splash of the fountain, which seems to have grown louder in the absence of the city's daytime bustle. You stand up, your joints popping in the cool night air, and stretch your arms toward the stars that blanket the Alexandrian sky. The physical exhaustion is there, a dull ache in the small of your back and a stiffness in your neck, but it is overshadowed by a profound sense of vocational peace. You have spent the better part of a day in a state of hyperfocus, a rare gift in an era where life is often lived at the mercy of larger, more turbulent forces. You walk to the edge of the fountain and dip your hands into the water. It is shockingly cold, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the pearls and the oil lamp. As you wash the day's dust from your skin, you look at your reflection in the dark, shimmering surface of the basin. You are a craftsman of the high Roman era, a man who understands the value of a millimeter and the importance of a single knot. The water feels like a purification, a way to signal the end of the creative cycle. You think about the path these pearls took to reach your bench. They began in the crushing depths of the Erythraean Sea, harvested by men who risked their lives for a glimpse of iridescent white. They were traded in the markets of Berenice, carried by camel across the harsh eastern desert, and finally navigated through the chaotic streets of Alexandria to this very courtyard. Each pearl is a survivor, a tiny traveler that has crossed vast distances to be united by your silk thread. The jasmine trellis above you rustles in the night breeze, dropping a few spent white blossoms onto the tiles. You pick one up, rolling it between your fingers, just as you had done with the pearls earlier. The flower is soft and ephemeral, destined to brown and wither by tomorrow's light. The pearls, however, are different. They are frozen time, even as the empire ages. Even as the great library's scrolls become brittle with time, these pearls will retain their inner fire. They represent a bridge between the biological world and the eternal. This realization brings a quiet smile to your face. You are not just a jeweler, you are a guardian of permanence. You gather your few personal belongings, a leather pouch, a small iron key, and a light linen cloak, and prepare to leave the workshop for the night. The courtyard, which was your entire universe for the last several hours, now feels like a sacred space, a temple dedicated to the slow and the meticulous. As you walk toward the heavy wooden gate of the courtyard, you look back at your workbench. In the starlight, the cedar wood appears dark and ancient, a silent witness to the beauty that was birthed upon its surface today. You lock the gate with a heavy iron key, the click of the mechanism echoing through the narrow alleyway outside. The street is quiet, the paving stones still radiating a faint heat from the day's sun. Somewhere in the distance, a flute player is practicing a haunting melodic tune, the notes drifting through the air like the scent of the jasmine. You pull your cloak tighter against the cooling breeze and begin your walk home. The city of Alexandria breathes around you, a living, pulsing organism of marble, trade, and history. But inside your mind, the rhythm remains that of the silk and the stone. Click, click, click. The cadence of the necklace has become the cadence of your thoughts, a steady, reassuring heartbeat that will guide you into sleep. The walk through the streets of Alexandria at night is a journey through a city of ghosts and shadows. The moonlight hits the limestone facades of the villas, turning the wealthy district into a landscape of bone and silver. You move with the steady, unhurried pace of a man who has finished his labor. Your hands, though empty now of the pearls, still feel the phantom weight of the strand, a muscle memory of the tension and the texture. As you pass by the great colonnaded way, you see the silhouettes of the statues of the gods Serapis, Isis, and the deified emperors, watching over the city with sightless eyes. You feel a strange kinship with them tonight. They are carved from stone to last forever, much like the necklace you have just completed. You cross a small bridge over a canal, the water below reflecting the stars in a broken, shimmering mosaic that reminds you of the scattered pearls on your tray at the start of the afternoon. You reach the door of your own modest home, tucked away in a quiet corner near the Mausian. The air here is less salty, smelling more of the dry papyrus and old parchment from the nearby libraries. Inside, the house is cool and smells of cedar oil and dried herbs. You do not light a lamp immediately. Instead, you sit by the window watching the moon climb higher into the sky. Your mind wanders back to the workbench. You think of the central pearl, the one you called the monarch. There was a moment, just as the sun was setting, when it seemed to emit its own light, a soft internal glow that had nothing to do with the environment. It is these moments of unexpected wonder that keep you tied to the craft. It is not just about the gold or the prestige, it is about those seconds where the material world seems to reveal a secret brilliance. You think of the silk thread, the humble spine of the entire creation. Without it, the pearls are just beautiful pebbles, disconnected and chaotic. It is the thread that gives them purpose, that turns them into a story, a sequence, a jewelry. In many ways, you realize, the craftsman is the thread of the city. You bind the raw materials of the empire together, turning the spoils of trade and the fruits of nature into the culture of the age. You close your eyes, and the darkness behind your eyelids is filled with the image of the blue linen tray. You see the pearls rolling softly as you tilt the tray, the shush of their movement like a tiny wave on a sandy beach. You can almost hear the fountain again, its constant, liquid chatter providing the rhythm for your internal monologue. The silence of your home is deep and restorative. You feel the tension finally leaving your shoulders, the tightness in your neck dissolving into the soft cushions of your chair. Tomorrow there will be new projects, perhaps a signet ring for a centurion, or a set of gold earrings with teardrop emeralds for a young bride, but they will not be the same as the pearls. Every project has its own soul, its own demands on your patience and your skill. The pearls, however, required a specific kind of stillness, a meditative quality that stayed with you long after the work was done. You imagine the necklace resting in its velvet pouch, the pearls touching one another in the dark, waiting for the moment they will be revealed to the world. They are patient, they have spent years in the dark of the ocean, and a few hours in a bag is nothing to them. As you prepare for sleep, you wash your face one last time with cool water from a ceramic pitcher. The ritual is the same every night, but tonight it feels like a benediction. You lie down on your bed, the linen sheets smooth against your skin. Outside, the city of Alexandria continues its nocturnal life. The distant bark of a dog, the footfalls of a night watchman, the sigh of the wind through the columns. But these sounds are distant, filtered through the satisfaction of a day well spent. You fall into a dreamless sleep, your fingers twitching slightly as if still guiding a bronze needle through a tiny, lustrous hole. The cycle of the day is complete, and the beauty you created is now part of the history of the world, a silent testament to the jeweler's bench in the year 150. The morning after the necklace is completed, the light in Alexandria feels different, crisper, as if the dawn itself has been polished by the same sea mist that coats the harbour. You wake before the sun has fully cleared the horizon, your body still attuned to the rhythm of the bench. There is a specific clarity that comes after a day of intense focus, a lingering sharpness of the senses. You return to your workshop, not to work, but to perform the final inspection. The heavy wooden gate groans softly as you unlock it, and the courtyard greets you with the cool, damp scent of morning dew on jasmine. The fountain is still trickling, a silver thread in the early light, its sound a constant companion to your solitude. You sit at the bench and reach for the velvet pouch. As you draw the necklace out, the first rays of the sun catch the pearls. They do not merely reflect the light, they drink it. The silk thread hidden between the knots holds the strand in a graceful, sweeping curve. You run your fingers along the length of it one last time. There are no snags, no uneven tensions, no flaws that your practiced touch can detect. It is as close to perfection as a human hand can achieve. You feel a sense of detachment now. The piece no longer belongs to you, it belongs to the world of form and function. You place it into the ebony box, lined with the finest Tyrian purple silk, and close the lid. The thud of the wood meeting wood is the final period on the sentence of your labor. You spend the morning preparing for the delivery. This too is part of the jeweler's craft, the the presentation of the dream. You dress in a clean linen tunic, pinning it with a simple bronze fibula. You take the ebony box and wrap it in a protective layer of leather, securing it to your belt. The walk to the Bruchion district takes you through the heart of the city's intellectual life. You pass the great library, where scholars are already beginning to gather in the colonnades, their scrolls tucked under their arms. You hear snippets of debate in Greek and Latin, discussions on philosophy, mathematics, and the stars. You feel a quiet pride knowing that while they seek the truth in words and numbers, you have found it in the weight and luster of the earth's treasures. The Villa of the Client is a masterpiece of Roman architecture, with marble columns and floors inlaid with intricate mosaics of sea creatures. You are greeted by a silent servant who leads you into a reception room cooled by a breeze from a private garden. The client, a woman of great poise and even greater influence, enters the room. There is a moment of anticipation as you reveal the ebony box. When the lid is opened, the pearls seem to illuminate the room. You watch her face, the widening of the eyes, the slight intake of breath. This is the true click of completion. It is the moment when the art meets its purpose. She lifts the necklace, and as it settles against her skin, the pearls seem to warm instantly, as if they have been waiting for this contact. You leave the villa with a pouch of silver denarii, but the money feels secondary to the image of the pearls against the purple silk of her gown. You walk back toward your workshop, the sun now high and hot over the city. The streets are crowded, the air thick with the smell of spices and the dust of the empire. But you are unhurried. You have fulfilled your duty to the craft. You return to your courtyard, sit by the fountain, and watch the water fall. The bench is empty now, a clean slate of cedar wood waiting for the next challenge. You realize that the stillness you cultivated yesterday has become a permanent part of you. The click of the pearls has faded, but the peace remains, a quiet undercurrent to the vibrant life of Alexandria in the year 150. The echo of the empty bench is a unique kind of silence. After the intensity of the pearl necklace, the cedar surface seems to breathe along with the shifting shadows of the afternoon. You spend a few moments simply sitting there, your hands resting flat against the wood, feeling the grain that has become so familiar to your palms. The silver denarii in your pouch are heavy, a tangible reminder of the value the world places on your patience. But the true reward is the lingering sense of order in your mind. You look at the tray where the pearls once sat. A few stray fibers of saffron silk remain, tiny golden hairs against the dark blue linen. You pick them up carefully and let them float away on the breeze, watching them disappear toward the jasmine vines. If you find peace in these details of the ancient world, don't forget to leave a like and comment below on which era of history brings you the most serenity. Your engagement helps our community of dreamers grow. The courtyard is transitioning into the golden hour once again. The light is thicker, more honeyed, casting long dramatic shadows from the bronze lion's head. You decide to spend the rest of the day in preparation for the next cycle. A jeweler's work is never truly done. Even when the needle is still, the mind must be sharpening itself for the next stone. You reach for a small whetstone made of black volcanic rock and a set of fine iron gravers. The sound of metal against stone, a rhythmic shur, 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 is a different kind of music than the click of the pearls, but it is no less meditative. It is the sound of readiness. You focus on the angle of the blade, the pressure of your thumb, the way the light glints off the newly sharpened edge. As you work, you notice the sounds of the neighborhood becoming more intimate. A mother calls to her child in the melodic Egyptian tongue. A neighbor's goat bleats in a nearby enclosure. The smell of charcoal fires begins to rise, signaling the preparation of the evening meal. You feel like a weaver in the great tapestry of Alexandria. You are not a merchant shouting in the agora, nor a sailor battling the waves, nor a philosopher debating in the halls of the Mauseon. You are the silent observer, the one who takes the fragments of the world and binds them into something enduring. This realization brings a deep sense of belonging. The city is a storm of commerce and power, but your courtyard is the eye of that storm, a place where time is measured not by the ticking of a water clock, but by the perfection of a curve. You decide to sort a new batch of stones that arrived late yesterday. You open a small leather satchel and pour the contents onto the tray. This time it is not pearls, but garnets from the mines of Upper Egypt. They spill out like drops of dark, concentrated wine, their deep red facets catching the dying light and turning it into something mysterious. They are a different challenge than the pearls. Pearls are about surface and luster, garnets are about depth and fire. You pick one up and hold it to the light. It is like looking into the heart of a sunset. You begin to group them by size and clarity, your fingers moving with the same deliberate grace they possessed yesterday. The rhythm of the day is winding down. You watch as a large moth, its wings the color of dusty papyrus, flutters around the fountain before settling on a cool stone. The air is cooling rapidly now, the Mediterranean breeze bringing the scent of salt and distant cedar forests. You feel a profound gratitude for the life you have carved out for yourself here. In a world that can be harsh and unpredictable, you have found a sanctuary of beauty. You place the garnets back into their pouch, cover the workbench with a heavy linen cloth to protect it from the night damp, and take one last look at the sky. The first stars are appearing, cold and bright, much like the diamonds that the wealthiest of the Romans are starting to favor. You smile, tuck your tools away, and prepare to surrender to the quiet of the Alexandrian night, knowing that tomorrow the cycle of creation will begin anew. The transition from the cool gems of yesterday to the potential of a new dawn brings a fresh clarity to the workshop. You arrive at the bench as the first sliver of pink light touches the top of the jasmine trellis. There is no urgency in your movements, only a steady, rhythmic preparation. You begin by sweeping the stone floor of the courtyard with a broom made of dried palm fronds. The shush-shush of the bristles against the limestone tiles is a cleansing ritual, clearing away the physical and mental dust of previous labors. As the sun climbs, the shadows retreat, and the courtyard becomes a well of golden light once more. You set out your tools for the morning's task, the bow drill, the fine-tipped needles, and a new spool of silk. This one, a deep, regal crimson. You are preparing to work on a set of prayer beads, a commission for a priestess at the Temple of Serapis. The material this time is translucent amber, traded from the far north, the land of the Hyperboreans beyond the frozen forests. Each piece of amber feels impossibly light, like solidified honey or trapped sunlight. When you rub a piece against your wool tunic, it develops a faint electric charge, attracting small bits of thread, a magic that never fails to amuse the childlike part of your soul. You begin the process of selecting the beads, looking for those that contain tiny, ancient inclusions, a trapped leaf, a bubble of air from a world that existed long before Rome was a village. You feel the connection between the deep time of the amber and the fleeting moment of your own life. The drilling begins. This is the loudest part of your day, though it is still a quiet, intimate sound. The bow drill hums as the horsehair string spins the spindle. You use a drop of oil to lubricate the tip, and the scent of warm amber, resinous and sweet, like pine, fills the air. It is a more aggressive fragrance than the jasmine, one that speaks of ancient forests and the sap of 1,000-year-old trees. You work with a steady hand, applying just enough pressure to penetrate the resin without causing it to crack. Each hole is a bridge, a path for the crimson silk to follow. The whir of the drill becomes the drone of the morning, a hypnotic vibration that you feel in your very bones. You are carving paths through history, one bead at a time. Midway through the morning, a young apprentice from the coppersmith's shop next door stops by to deliver a new set of bronze tweezers. He stays for a moment, eyes wide as he watches you work. You don't speak, but you allow him to see the precision required. The way you hold your breath as the drill finishes its journey through a bead. He nods, a silent acknowledgement of the brotherhood of makers, and slips away as quietly as he came. The social fabric of Alexandria is woven from these small interactions, a network of hands that build and maintain the splendor of the city. You return to your task, the crimson thread now ready to be introduced to the first piece of amber. The amber beads are threaded one by one. They do not click like the pearls, they make a softer, more muffled sound, a dull thud that reflects their lighter density. Yet the sensation of them in your hand is warm and comforting. As the strand grows, the sunlight passes through the amber, casting glowing orange spots across the dark blue linen of your tray. It looks as if you're threading embers from a dying fire. You knot the silk between each bead with the same rhythmic perfection you applied to the pearls. This is the core of your existence, the repetitive, beautiful act of binding the disparate into the whole. The world outside the walls may be changing, the currents of power shifting in the great palaces, but here, the tension of the silk remains the only truth that matters. You reach for the next bead. The afternoon ahead of you, a blank canvas of golden light and resinous scent. The sun reaches its peak, turning the amber beads into glowing coals of orange and gold. As you thread the 13th bead onto the crimson silk, you notice how the light refracts through the resin, revealing a tiny, perfect prehistoric fly trapped forever in a dance of stillness. You pause, holding the bead up to the sky. In Alexandria, a city obsessed with the preservation of knowledge and the mummification of kings, this tiny insect is perhaps the most successfully preserved being of all. It has seen no decay, no loss of detail. You feel a profound sense of humility as you slide it down the thread. Your work today is a temporary marriage of materials, but the materials themselves carry the weight of eons. The sound of the amber meeting amber is a soft, organic thud, less brittle than the pearls, more like the sound of heartbeats in a quiet room. The courtyard is a sanctuary of warmth. A lizard, neon green and motionless, basks on the edge of your workbench, its throat pulsing in time with the distant rhythm of the city. You have reached the halfway point of the prayer beads. The crimson silk provides a striking contrast to the honey-colored amber, a river of blood running through a path of light. You take a sip of watered wine from a terracotta cup, the cool liquid refreshing your throat as the scent of the resinous dust lingers in the air. The work of a jeweler is often seen as a pursuit of luxury, but in this moment it feels more like a religious rite. You are constructing a tool for focus, an object that will be held by a priestess as she petitions the gods for the safety of the city and the rising of the Nile. Every knot you tie is a seal of intention. You reach for the larger central bead, the master of the strand. It is a piece of Baltic amber, the size of a pigeon's egg, cloudy and mysterious, containing swirls of white that look like trapped smoke. Drilling this piece requires a change in pace. You slow the bow drill, feeling for any internal stresses within the ancient resin. The vibration travels up your arm, a subtle hum that connects your nervous system to the prehistoric sap. There is a resistance, then a smooth release as the bit clears the other side. You wipe the bead with a scrap of wool, polishing it until it glows with a deep inner fire. As you thread it, the weight of the strand shifts significantly. The necklace is no longer a collection of fragments, it has gained a center of gravity. The afternoon begins its slow tilt toward evening. The breeze from the harbor carries the distant sharp cry of gulls and the faint smell of tar and hemp from the shipyards. You ignore the world beyond the gate, focusing entirely on the play of crimson and gold. You start the descent, threading the remaining beads to mirror the first half. The symmetry of the work provides a psychological anchor. You know exactly what comes next, yet each bead requires fresh attention. No two pieces of amber are alike. Some are oily to the touch, others feel as dry as bone. You adjust your knots to accommodate these personalities. The thud, thud, thud of the beads continues, a metronome for the passing of the hours. As you approach the end of the strand, you find yourself thinking about the nature of thread. It is the most fragile part of the jewelry, yet it is the most essential. It is the invisible force that creates the object. In your years at the bench, you have seen gold tarnish and stones chip, but a well-tied knot in high-quality silk can hold for a human lifetime. You take a moment to check the tension of the entire strand, letting it drape over your hand. It moves like a liquid, the amber beads sliding against one another with a gentle, friction-filled grace. You reach for the final 3 beads, the smallest of the set, which will taper the design down to the bronze clasp. The light in the courtyard is turning lavender, the jasmine starting to exhale its nocturnal perfume once again. You are nearly there, at the end of another day's journey into the heart of the material. The final 3 beads of amber are smaller than the rest, shaped like droplets of rain caught in a sunset. You pick up the first of these tiny orbs, feeling its lightness. It seems to have no weight at all, as if it wants to float away into the violet sky of Alexandria. You guide the bronze needle through the crimson silk, following like a thin vein of life. The soft thud as it meets the larger beads is a gentle, muffled sound, signaling the beginning of the end. You tie a knot that is both firm and elegant, a small mountain of silk that keeps the stones in their proper order. The courtyard is now draped in deep shadows, the limestone walls holding on to the day's heat and radiating it back like a slow stone breath. You work by the fading natural light, your eyes adjusted to the nuances of the amber's glow. The second to last bead is a pale lemon-coloured piece, almost transparent. As you slide it home, you think about the priestess who will eventually hold these beads. Her fingers will trace the same path yours have, moving from knot to knot in the darkness of the temple. She will seek peace and divine connection through the texture of the resin you have spent your day perfecting. This realization adds a layer of responsibility to your movements. Each knot must be flawless, each transition smooth, so that her meditation is never interrupted by a snag or a loose thread. You are the architect of her stillness. You pull the crimson silk taut, the friction making a faint zip sound that is lost in the splashing of the fountain. Now the final bead. It is a dark cherry-red piece of amber, almost the same color as the silk itself. It acts as a visual anchor, a deep note at the end of a golden melody. You thread it with a lingering slowness, savoring the final tactile interaction with the project. The thud it makes as it settles against the lemon bead is the final punctuation mark of the afternoon. You reach for the bronze clasp, a simple heavy hook cast in the shape of a lotus bud. The metal is dark and cool, a grounding element for the ethereal amber. You loop the silk through the eye of the lotus, your fingers moving through the complex series of terminal knots with the grace of a musician playing a final chord. You use your iron blade to cut the silk, and for a moment the world feels suspended. The prayer beads lie on the bench, a circle of warmth and light. You pick them up, letting them drape over your palm. They are surprisingly warm to the touch, having absorbed the heat of your hands and the Egyptian sun. The amber glows with a soft, diffused light, the crimson knots appearing like tiny rubies between the golden stones. You have transformed a handful of prehistoric resin and a length of thread into a sacred object. The silence of the courtyard is absolute now, a heavy velvet quiet that feels like a reward. You place the beads into a linen wrap, the fabric soft against the polished surfaces. As you begin to clear your bench, you look at the fountain. The water is a dark, moving silver in the starlight. You realize that your life is measured in these completions, the end of a strand, the tying of a final knot, the closing of a box. Each project takes a piece of your time and replaces it with a piece of beauty. You wash your hands in the cool basin, the water rinsing away the resinous dust of the amber. Tomorrow will bring new stones, new challenges, and a new rhythm. But tonight there is only the satisfaction of the finished work. You lock the heavy wooden gate of the courtyard, the iron key turning with a familiar solid click. The streets of Alexandria are alive with the sounds of the night, but you carry the stillness of the bench within you as you walk home under the watching stars. The following morning, the air in Alexandria is crisp. Carrying the scent of the sea more strongly than usual, you return to the courtyard, but today the bench feels different. The absence of the amber and the pearls has left a vacuum, a clean slate that demands a new beginning. You spend the first hour of the light organizing your workspace. A jeweler's bench in 150 CE is a microcosm of the empire's trade routes, and today you are preparing for a project that involves lapis lazuli from the far reaches of the east. These stones are the color of the midnight sky, flecked with gold pyrite like distant stars. They are heavy, cold, and regal. You lay out a new length of silk, this one dyed a deep midnight blue to match the depth of the stones. The shur of the silk as it unrolls from the wooden spool is the first sound of a new symphony. You begin by grading the lapis. Unlike the pearls, which are gifts of the sea, these are gifts of the mountains. They have a grit to them, a mineral honesty that requires a different kind of handling. You use a small copper bowl of water to clean the stones. watching as the dust of the journey washes away to reveal the intense ultramarine beneath. The water in the bowl turns a cloudy blue, a miniature ocean reflecting the sky above. You select the central stone, a rectangular tablet engraved with the image of an Egyptian scarab. This is a marriage of Roman fashion and ancient local tradition, a common sight in this melting pot of a city. The weight of the stone in your hand is substantial, a piece of the earth's core refined by human intention. The process of threading the lapis is more forceful than the previous days. The holes drilled in these stones are slightly wider, and the blue silk is thicker, designed to bear the increased weight. As you slide the first bead home, the sound is a solid, stone-on-stone clack. It is a masculine sound, rhythmic and sturdy. The courtyard seems to respond to this change in energy. The fountain's trickle feels more like a mountain stream than a garden feature. You work with a silver needle, sturdier than the bronze ones used for the pearls, pushing it through the heart of the blue stones with a steady, rhythmic pressure. Your fingers, already calloused by years of labor, find the familiar grip. By midday, the heat begins to settle into the stone walls of the courtyard. You pause to watch a pair of swallows nesting in the eaves of the workshop. They are tireless. Their movements a blur of iridescent feathers as they bring food to their young. There is a parallel between their labor and yours, the constant, repetitive building of something meaningful from small, disparate parts. You take a piece of flatbread dipped in olive oil, the simple flavors grounding you in the physical world while your mind remains hovering over the blue stones. The scent of the jasmine is still there, but it is now competing with the metallic tang of the copper bowl and the earthy smell of the wet lapis. The afternoon is spent building the gradient. The lapis beads are separated by small gold spacers, tiny rings of hammered metal that catch the sun and provide a rhythmic flash of light between the dark blues. Each time the needle passes through a gold spacer, it makes a high-pitched tink, followed by the deep clack of the lapis. This alternating rhythm, tink, clack, becomes the pulse of your afternoon. You find yourself swaying slightly in time with the work, a dance of the seated craftsman. The necklace is growing, a line of celestial beauty taking shape on the dark linen. You are no longer just threading beads, you are organizing the heavens, one star-flecked stone at a time. The world of Alexandria continues to roar beyond the walls, but inside, there is only the blue, the gold, and the steady movement of your hands. The lapis lazuli necklace is reaching its full length, and the weight of the deep blue stones is heavy against the cedar bench. Each clack as the stones meet is a reminder of the enduring nature of the earth. These are not the soft organic products of the sea or the resin of a forest. These are the bones of the world, hard and unyielding. You take a moment to adjust the tension of the midnight blue silk. Because lapis is so much heavier than pearl or amber, the knots must be tied with a strength that strains your forearms. You pull the thread taut, feeling the silk bite slightly into your skin, ensuring that the heavy beads will not sag or stretch the strand over time. The gold spacers glint in the declining sun, appearing like tiny suns caught between fragments of a midnight sky. The air in the courtyard has become still as the afternoon heat begins to dissipate. The fountain's water seems to sparkle with a more intense light as the sun's angle becomes more acute. You reach for the final lapis bead on the left side of the strand. It is a stone of exceptional quality, a solid block of ultramarine without a single streak of white calcite. As the needle passes through it, you feel the familiar vibration of the silk against the stone. You follow it with a gold spacer, then another bead, maintaining the perfect symmetry that is the hallmark of your workshop. You are creating a piece for a wealthy merchant's wife, a woman who values the ancient power of the blue stone as much as its beauty. In Egypt, lapis has always been the color of the divine, the hair of the gods themselves. As you reach the end of the strand, you prepare the heavy gold toggle clasp. It is shaped like an anchor, a fitting symbol for a city that lives and breathes by its harbor. The gold is soft and warm compared to the cold blue of the stones. You loop the thick silk through the gold ring, your fingers moving with a heavy, deliberate grace. The terminal knots for this piece are larger and more complex, intended to be visible as part of the design. You use a small bronze awl to tuck the ends of the silk back into the beads, hiding the finish so that the necklace appears to be an unbroken circle of celestial light. The final clack as the toggle meets the last stone signals the end of this particular labor. You lay the lapis necklace out on the bench, and the contrast between the deep blue and the warm cedar wood is striking. It looks like a fragment of the night sky has fallen onto your workspace. You pick it up, and the coldness of the stones seeps into your skin, a refreshing sensation after the heat of the day. The necklace doesn't drape like the pearls, it has a more architectural presence, a solid and commanding weight. You realize that while the pearls were a whisper of moonlight, the lapis is a statement of power. You place it in a heavy wooden box carved with lotus flowers, the wood providing a protective shell for the treasure within. The courtyard is now in that brief magical twilight where the colors of the world seem to vibrate before fading into grey. You sit for a moment listening to the city, the distant rumble of carts, the shouting of sailors, and the hum of thousands of lives all blend into a single distant roar. But here by the bench the silence is profound. You have spent your day in the company of the blue stones, and their stillness has entered your spirit. You feel a deep, quiet pride in the work of your hands. You have taken the raw, jagged pieces of a mountain and transformed them into a symbol of elegance and divinity. You close the lid of the box, the thump of the wood, a final seal on the day's achievement. Tomorrow will bring a new stone, perhaps a shipment of emeralds from the Mons Smaragdus, but tonight the blue of the lapis is the only color that remains in your mind. The morning after the lapis is completed, the courtyard is shrouded in a fine, misty haze that has rolled in from the great harbor. This dampness softens the sounds of Alexandria, turning the usual clatter into a muted, rhythmic pulse. You stand at your bench, running a thumb over the cedar grain, feeling the slight indentations where the heavy blue stones rested yesterday. Today, the work is of a different nature entirely. From a small iron-bound chest, you produce a handful of emeralds, the tears of the earth from the Mons Smaragdus. They are not the clear, faceted gems of the future, but raw, translucent cylinders and hexagonal prisms of a green so deep it seems to contain the essence of a spring forest. You lay them out on a fresh piece of white linen, the contrast making the green appear almost electric in the morning light. You begin by sorting the emeralds by their depth of color. Some are pale and watery like the shallows of the Nile, while others are a dark, saturated forest green. This project is a commission for a high-ranking official's signet cord, a functional piece of jewelry that must be both beautiful and durable. You select a fine, twisted cord of silver wire and silk, a hybrid of strength and flexibility. As you begin to thread the first emerald, the sound is a crisp, glassy click. It is higher in pitch than the pearls, sharper than the amber. It is the sound of crystalline structure. If these tales of ancient craftsmanship bring a sense of stillness to your day, please consider subscribing and sharing this video. Your support allows us to continue exploring the quiet corners of history together. The work with emeralds requires a delicate touch. They are brittle stones prone to shattering if the tension is uneven. You use a specialized bronze needle with a blunted tip to avoid scratching the internal veils of the gems. As you slide the green stones onto the silver silk cord, you feel the microscopic friction of the drill holes. The scent of the courtyard is changing. The damp mist has intensified the smell of the wet limestone and the earthy, mossy aroma of the ferns growing near the fountain's base. It feels as though the environment is aligning with the verdant nature of the stones. You work with a slow, deliberate pace, your breathing evening out until it matches the rhythm of the click, click, click of the green crystals. By mid-afternoon, the mist has burned away, leaving a sky of brilliant, unrelenting blue. The emeralds catch the direct sunlight, casting green sparks across your hands and the workbench. You notice a small frog has made its way from the fountain to a shaded corner of the bench, its green skin a perfect match for the stones you hold. You pause for a moment, watching the creature's throat move in quick, rhythmic pulses. In Alexandria, the heart of the world's learning, nature, and art are never far apart. You return to the cord, adding a series of small, granulated silver beads between the emeralds to act as buffers. The tink of the silver and the click of the emerald create a sophisticated melody, a song of the mountains and the forge. As the strand nears completion, you feel the familiar ache in your eyes from the hours of close work. You look toward the pharos, visible now as a white finger pointing toward the heavens, and let your gaze soften. The green of the stones seems to linger in your vision, a soothing afterimage. You reach for the final emerald, a small, vibrant crystal that will sit near the silver toggle. The process of tying the terminal knots in the silver silk cord is demanding. The wire requires a steady, firm pressure to bend without snapping. Your fingers, though tired, move with a precision born of decades of repetition. You are not just making a cord, you are creating a symbol of authority, an object that will press its mark into wax and clay, finalizing the laws and letters of the empire. The sun begins to dip, and the green of the emeralds deepens, turning into the color of the deep sea at dusk. The final emerald is secured with a definitive pull of the silver silk cord. As the knot settles into its permanent home, you feel a surge of quiet triumph. The cord is not merely a string of stones, it is a weight of responsibility, a tool of governance that will soon hang from the belt of a man who shapes the future of this province. You hold the strand up to the last of the direct sunlight, watching how the green light spills through the emeralds and stains your palm like a liquid shadow. The click of the stones against the silver spaces has ceased, replaced by the heavy, satisfying silence of a completed work. The evening air is cooler now, the humidity of the harbour mist having vanished to leave a dry, desert-like clarity. You lay the emerald cord on the white linen, where it looks like a vibrant green serpent resting in the snow. You spend the next hour in a slow, meditative clean-up. Each tool is wiped with an oiled cloth, the bronze needle, the silver tweezers, the fine iron awl before being returned to its velvet-lined slot. This maintenance is the silent half of the jeweller's life, the respect shown to the instruments that allow the hand to manifest the mind's vision. The fountain's trickle is a silver whisper in the growing dark, a sound that has become so ingrained in your consciousness that its absence would feel like a loss of breath. You look at the emeralds one last time before placing them in a small cedarwood box. The lid closes with a soft, airtight hiss, sealing the green fire within the dark wood. The day's labour is over, but the resonance of the stones remains in your fingertips, a lingering vibration of crystalline energy. As the first stars begin to bloom over Alexandria, you sit on the stone bench by the fountain and let your mind wander. You think of the emeralds returning to the dark, and how they spent millions of years in the earth before being brought into the light for this brief, brilliant purpose. You feel a deep connection to the continuity of things. The city around you is a cacophony of ambition and noise, but here, in the courtyard, you have found a way to participate in the eternal. The click of the pearls, the thud of the amber, the clack of the lapis, and the glassy snap of the emeralds, these are the heartbeats of your life. They are the sounds of a man who has found his place in the great unfolding story of craftsmanship. You rise and walk to the gate, the iron key cold and familiar in your hand. The street outside is a river of shadows, the torches of the city beginning to flicker in the distance. You turn the lock, the heavy thud of the bolt echoing through the courtyard like a final authoritative note. As you walk home through the cooling streets, your pace is light and unhurried. You are a maker of beauty, a weaver of the world's treasures, and your work is done for now. The night is long and full of the scents of salt and jasmine, and you walk under the stars of 150 CE, carrying the stillness of the emeralds in your heart, ready to dream of the next stone that will find its way to your bench. The dawn of the following day brings a gift from the southern trade routes, carnelian. As you unlock the gate, the air is unusually dry, carrying a hint of the desert sands that lie beyond the city's fertile reach. On your bench sits a small linen sack filled with these stones of fire and sun. Carnelian, the favourite of the ancients, possesses a warm, translucent orange that reminds you of the horizon just before the sun breaks. You pour them out onto your cedar table, and the sound is a cheerful, lively skitter-clack. These are not the regal, heavy stones of yesterday, but vibrant, energetic gems that seem to pulse with a life of their own. You run your hand over them, feeling their waxy smoothness, a texture unique to the Chalcedony family. You have been tasked with creating a protective amulet string, for a traveler heading toward the Red Sea. For this, you choose a sturdy waxed linen thread of a natural cream color. The linen is humble, yet its strength is legendary, capable of enduring the sweat of a journey and the grit of the road. You begin by knotting the end of the thread around a small bronze ring. As you slide the first carnelian bead on, the sound is a soft, rhythmic click. It lacks the brittle sharpness of the emerald. Instead, it has a solid, grounded resonance. The orange of the stone seems to catch the early morning light and hold it, glowing from within like a small, trapped ember. The rhythm of the morning is brisk. You work with a sense of vitality that matches the stones. Between each carnelian bead, you place a small knot, ensuring that even if the cord were to snap in the wilds of the desert, the traveler would lose only a single stone. This is the practical side of your art, the marriage of aesthetics and survival. The click knot sequence becomes a steady pulse, a walking pace for your fingers. The courtyard is filled with the scent of blooming citrus from a neighbor's garden, a bright, sharp fragrance that cuts through the ever-present jasmine. You feel the energy of the city waking up, the distant calls of street vendors, and the rhythmic hammering from the blacksmith's quarter. By midday, the string of carnelian is long enough to wrap twice around a wrist or hang low over a chest. The stones vary in shade from a pale honey orange to a deep burnt red, creating a gradient that looks like a flickering flame. You pause to watch the shadows of the vine leaves dance across your workspace. The movement is chaotic yet graceful, much like the patterns of light inside the translucent stones. You take a moment to sharpen your iron blade on the wet stone, the shur sound providing a brief, metallic interlude to the stony clicks. Every action in this courtyard is a layer of a larger harmony, a testament to the life of a man who works in silence so that his creations may speak. As the afternoon sun begins to mellow, you reach the final stone of the amulet. It is a large, teardrop-shaped carnelian, polished to a mirror finish. This will be the focal point, the heart of the protection. You drill through the narrow end with extra care, the bow drill humming a low, steady note. The orange dust of the stone coats your fingertips, a fine, warm powder that smells of the earth's deep history. You thread it onto the linen, tie the final complex hitch knots, and secure the bronze clasp. The amulet is finished. It feels warm and substantial, a piece of the sun made portable. You lay it down on the bench, and for a moment, the orange stones seem to vibrate against the dark wood, ready to begin their journey into the vast, unknown world beyond the walls of Alexandria. The morning after the carnelian is sent on its way, the courtyard feels exceptionally still, as if the air itself is waiting for a new direction. You walk to the stone basin and splash your face with water, the ripples distorting the reflection of the vine-covered walls. Today there is a small, heavy parcel wrapped in oiled leather, sitting on the edge of your bench. Inside you find a collection of hematite, stones of iron and silver, dark as a winter moon and heavy as lead. They do not glow like the emeralds or warm like the amber. They are cool, metallic, and mirror-bright. When you spill them onto the cedar, they don't skitter. They land with a series of solid, authoritative thunks. This project is a set of heavy beads for a scholar of the Mausion, a man who spends his nights tracking the movements of the planets. He requested hematite for its grounding weight, a physical counterpoint to the ethereal nature of his celestial calculations. You choose a thick, braided silk thread of dark charcoal grey. As you guide the first bead onto the silk, the sound is a dense clink, a sound that carries the weight of the forge and the mountain. The hematite is so polished that you can see a distorted miniature of your own courtyard in each sphere, the arch of the jasmine, the edge of the fountain, and the concentrated line of your own brow. The work is slow and physically demanding. Each bead is a small anchor, and by the time you have threaded 10 of them, the weight on your lap is significant. The silver-grey silk disappears into the dark stones, creating the illusion of a solid metal chain that has somehow gained the flexibility of water. You work through the midday heat, the sun reflecting off the metallic surfaces of the beads and casting sharp, dancing glints of light onto the shaded walls of the workshop. The scent of the courtyard is dry today, the jasmine fading slightly to reveal the smell of old stone and the faint metallic tang of the hematite itself. As the afternoon progresses, you begin to appreciate the stoic beauty of the ironstone. It does not demand attention with bright colors, it commands respect with its substance. You find your own thoughts becoming more weighted and orderly, moving in sync with the clink, clink, clink of the dark spheres. The fountain continues its tireless song, but today it sounds like the ticking of a great liquid clock, measuring out the seconds of a life dedicated to the small and the perfect. You realize that every material you have touched this week, the pearls, the amber, the lapis, the emeralds, and now the hematite, has shaped your mood, turning your internal world into a reflection of the stones. By the time the sun begins to dip toward the great sea, the scholar's strand is complete. You tie the final knot with a heavy-duty silk twist, ensuring the weight of the iron will never fray its tether. The necklace lies on the bench like a coiled shadow, beautiful in its austerity. You pick it up, and the coldness of the ironstone is a shock against your warm palm, a grounding force that seems to pull your spirit back to the earth. You place it into a simple box of dark oak, the wood a fitting companion for the weight of the stones. As you lock the courtyard gate for the night, the thud of the bolt feels like one more hematite bead falling into place, a final note of solidity in the shifting tapestry of Alexandria. The new dawn brings a rare and delicate arrival to the workshop, a collection of tiny, teardrop-shaped pieces of turquoise brought by a caravan from the Sinai Peninsula. These stones are the color of a shallow lagoon, a soft and vibrant blue-green that seems to hold the memory of the sky. You pour them onto your bench, and they make a sound like a sudden summer rain on a wooden roof, a light musical pitter-patter. Unlike the heavy hematite, these stones feel airy and porous, sensitive to the touch and the environment. You decide to use a thread of bleached white linen, a clean and bright backdrop that will allow the color of the Sinai stones to sing. You are creating a set of ornaments for a young girl's wedding day, pieces meant to symbolize the clarity and freshness of a new beginning. As you pick up the first piece of turquoise, you notice the subtle webbing of dark brown matrix running through the blue, like the branches of a winter tree against a spring sky. You slide it onto the linen thread, and the sound is a delicate, hollow click. It is a fragile sound, reminding you that turquoise is a stone of the spirit, easily influenced by the oils of the skin and the heat of the sun. You handle each piece with extreme gentleness, your fingers moving with the lightness of a bird's wing. The morning progresses in a blur of soft color. The courtyard is filled with the scent of the sea breeze which has returned to chase away the desert dry. The fountain's splashing is a bright, cheerful accompaniment to the click, click, click of the turquoise. You find yourself smiling as you work. There is something inherently hopeful about this particular shade of blue. It is the color of the Nile during a peaceful season, the color of a child's dream. Between the stones, you tie small decorative knots in the white linen, creating a pattern that looks like foam on the crest of a wave. By the time the sun is overhead, the first strand is nearly finished. You pause to look at your hands, which are stained with the faint, chalky dust of the stones. In Alexandria, turquoise is often associated with the goddess Hathor, the lady of joy and beauty, and you feel her presence in the quiet harmony of the morning. You take a small break to eat a few figs and a piece of honeyed bread, the sweetness of the fruit mirroring the sweetness of the work. The jasmine above you is in full bloom, its white stars nodding in the breeze as if approving of the blue-green treasures on your bench. The afternoon is spent finishing the matching earrings and a small hairpin. These smaller pieces require your most precise tools, the finest bronze needles and the smallest iron picks. You work with a magnifying lens of polished glass, peering into the heart of the turquoise to ensure that each hole is perfectly centered. The tink of the bronze against the stone is a tiny, crystalline note that punctuates the stillness of the courtyard. As the light begins to turn to gold, the turquoise seems to deepen in color, becoming more green, more oceanic. You finish the set as the first purple shadows stretch across the limestone floor. The white linen and the sky blue stones create a vision of purity that feels almost ethereal. You place them into a box of pale cypress wood which carries a clean, sharp scent that complements the stones. As you tidy your bench for the final time this week, you realize that your hands have touched the entire spectrum of human experience, from the morning weight of hematite to the joyful lightness of turquoise. You lock the gate, the click of the bolt a soft echo of the day's labor, and walk into the evening, the blue of the Sinai stones still glowing in your mind's eye like a distant, peaceful horizon. The morning following the completion of the turquoise set brings a heavy, humid stillness to Alexandria, the kind of weather that precedes a late-season storm. You arrive at the courtyard to find a small, wax-sealed jar waiting on your bench. Inside, preserved in fine sand to prevent chipping, are several dozen beads of translucent violet amethyst. These stones were mined from the remote desert quarries of Wadi el-Hudi, and their color is deep and royal, the hue of wine diluted with water. You pour them out onto a dark silk cloth, and the sound is a sophisticated glass-like chime. They are harder than the turquoise, more brilliant than the amber, and they carry a cold, regal dignity that demands a different pace of work. You have been commissioned to create a necklace for a high-ranking deaconess, a woman of quiet authority and profound faith. For this you select a triple strand of twisted silk in a pale silvery lavender. The color of the thread is designed to disappear into the stones, making the amethyst appear as though it is floating around the wearer's neck. You begin the process of threading, and the sound of the amethyst meeting the amethyst is a sharp, musical clink-clink. Each bead has been polished to a high luster, and as the light from the gathering clouds filters through the jasmine, the stones cast fractured purple shadows across your calloused palms. You feel the sharp edges of the crystalline structure, a reminder of the heat and pressure required to create such beauty from the Earth's crust. By midday, the sky has turned a bruised shade of charcoal, mirroring the deeper inclusions within the stones. The air is thick with the scent of ozone and the heavy perfume of the jasmine vines, which seem to huddle closer to the walls in anticipation of the rain. You work with a steady, unhurried hand, tying small invisible knots between each violet bead. This is the most technical part of the jeweler's craft, ensuring that the tension is consistent across 3 separate strands so they drape in perfect, concentric arcs. If you find beauty in these moments of ancient precision, don't forget to leave a like and share your favorite gemstone in the comments below. Your presence keeps this workshop alive. The first heavy drops of rain begin to fall, splashing into the stone basin of the fountain with a series of hollow plops. You don't move. The bench is sheltered by the deep overhang of the workshop roof. The sound of the rain on the tiles becomes a rhythmic white noise, a cocoon of sound that pushes the rest of the city away. In this private, watery world, the amethyst seems to glow with an intensified light. You reach for the clasp, a solid silver disc engraved with a simple cross. The coolness of the silver against the warmth of your fingertips is a grounding sensation. You begin the complex task of anchoring the 3 strands to the single silver point, your fingers weaving the lavender silk through the metal loops with the practiced ease of a net maker. As the storm peaks, the clink of the beads is drowned out by the thunder, yet you feel the vibration of the stones through the wood of the bench. It is a moment of pure connection between the elements and the art. By the time the rain begins to taper off into a soft drizzle, the necklace is complete. It lies on the dark silk like a crown of frozen wine, shimmering and wet-looking in the revitalized light. You pick it up, and the 3 strands fall into their perfect alignment, a harmony of geometry and color. You place the piece into a box of polished plum wood, the scent of the wet earth filling the courtyard as you prepare to close for the day. The cycle of the stone is finished, and as you turn the key in the lock, the heavy click sounds like a final, satisfied breath in the wake of the storm. The air after the storm is scrubbed clean, smelling of wet stone and the sharp, revitalizing scent of damp earth. You return to the bench as the early sun begins to steam the moisture from the limestone floor, creating a thin veil of mist that dances around your feet. Today, the project is a rare and ancient one, obsidian. These are fragments of volcanic glass blacker than a moonless night, smooth as a still pond, and sharper than any bronze blade. You pour the small polished spheres onto a tray lined with red velvet. and the sound they make is a dry, crystalline clack, clack. It is a sound without echoes, dense and final. Obsidian does not play with light. It swallows it, reflecting only the thinnest sliver of the world on its curved, dark surfaces. You are crafting a protective breastplate for a veteran of the legions, a man who has seen the sun rise over the Rhine and set over the sands of Judea. For this work, you choose a cord of braided leather, dark and supple. The organic smell of the leather balances the cold, mineral sharpness of the glass. As you thread the first obsidian bead, the sound is a muffled thump. There is a gravity to these stones, a physical weight that demands a firm hand. Between each obsidian sphere, you place a small bead of red jasper, representing the blood and fire of a soldier's life. The contrast between the deep, opaque red and the bottomless black is startling, a visual representation of life held against the void. The morning is spent in a meditative silence, deeper than usual. The fountain's water flows with a renewed vigor after the rain, its splashing a bright contrast to the dark work on the bench. You use a specialized iron needle, one you forged yourself for heavier materials, to pull the leather cord through the stones. Each time the obsidian meets the jasper, there is a subtle click, a meeting of fire and earth. You feel the strength in your own hands, the calluses earned through years of tension and stone. The courtyard around you is vibrant with life. A small lizard ventures out onto the wet stones to bask, its throat pulsing, but your focus remains locked on the geometry of the breastplate. By midday, the heat has returned, but it is a soft, tempered warmth. You take a piece of sharp cheese and a handful of olives, eating slowly as you study the pattern. The obsidian beads seem to pull at your vision, demanding a level of concentration that is almost exhausting. You think about the volcano that birthed this glass, the violent heat and the sudden cooling. Your work is the final stage of that ancient process, bringing order to the chaos of the earth. You reach for the central piece, a large flat disc of obsidian, etched with the image of a charging bull, the symbol of the soldier's legion. The engraving is shallow and precise, catching the light only when tilted at a specific angle. As the afternoon shadows begin to lengthen, you complete the final row of the breastplate. The weight of the leather and stone is substantial, a physical burden that will soon provide a psychological shield for its owner. You tie the terminal knots with a heavy-duty leather lace, sealing the ends with a drop of warm pine resin. The smell of the resin, sweet and smoky, mixes with the lingering scent of the damp courtyard. You lay the finished piece on the red velvet, and it looks like a dark, impenetrable star fallen from the sky. You pick it up, and the coldness of the volcanic glass is a grounding force, a reminder of the permanence of the earth. You place the breastplate into a heavy chest of cedar and iron, the lid closing with a definitive thud that echoes against the courtyard walls, signaling the end of another day's journey into the heart of the stone. The following morning is characterized by a strange silver light that seems to permeate every corner of the courtyard. The humidity has left a thin, dew-like sheen on the cedar bench, making the wood grain appear deeper and more ancient. Today's work involves a material that is neither stone nor metal, but a gift from the deep, warm waters of the Erythraean Sea, red coral. You open a small perforated box to reveal branches of the most vibrant, saturated crimson imaginable. These are not polished spheres yet, but raw, skeletal structures that look like petrified flames. When you move them, they produce a dry, skeletal clack, a sound that is porous and light, unlike the dense finality of the obsidian. You are tasked with creating a protective collar for a newborn, a tradition meant to ward off the evil eye and ensure a life of vitality. For this you select a fine thread of raw, undyed silk, strong enough to last a childhood, but soft enough for a cradle. You begin by carefully trimming the coral branches into uniform cylinders. The small iron saw makes a rhythmic rasp-rasp sound, releasing a fine, pinkish dust that smells faintly of the sea and salt. As you drill each piece, the bow drill produces a higher, more delicate hum than it did for the gems. You feel the organic nature of the material. It is less resistant than the stone, more willing to be shaped by the human hand. The morning light shifts from silver to a bright, clear gold. As you thread the first piece of coral, the sound is a soft, muffled tup. It is a gentle sound, fitting for an object destined for a child. You intersperse the red coral with tiny, hollow gold beads, each one light as a feather. When the coral meets the gold, there is a miniature chime, a bright, metallic spark in the middle of the organic crimson. The courtyard feels particularly alive today. A dragonfly with iridescent wings hovers over the fountain, its presence a fleeting moment of perfection that mirrors the delicacy of your work. You move with a light touch, your fingers navigating the tiny components with a grace that has become second nature. By midday, the collar is halfway complete. The red of the coral is so intense it seems to vibrate against the pale cedar of the bench. You take a moment to rest your eyes, watching the way the jasmine vines sway in the light breeze. The scent is intoxicating, a sweet, heavy floral that anchors you to this specific moment in Alexandria's history. You realize that you are part of a lineage of makers who have provided these charms for centuries, a continuity of care expressed through craft. You return to the bench, the tup-chime of the materials, creating a playful, rhythmic lullaby. The work is not just about the final product, it is about the intention woven into every knot of the silk. As the sun begins its slow descent toward the harbor, you reach the end of the strand. You secure the final piece of coral with a series of hidden, sturdy knots, ensuring the safety of the tiny wearer. The finished collar is a circle of fire and light, small enough to fit in the palm of your hand. You pick it up, and the weight is almost nothing, yet its visual presence is commanding. You place it in a small box lined with white wool, the red stones glowing against the fleece. As you tidy the workshop, the fountain continues its steady pulse, and you feel a sense of profound peace. You have created a shield of beauty for a life that has just begun. You lock the courtyard gate, the click of the iron lock, a final protective seal on the day's work, and step out into the cooling streets, the crimson of the coral still dancing behind your eyelids. The air of the morning is heavy with the scent of the sea, a thick saltiness that clings to the limestone walls of the courtyard. You arrive to find a small, lid-sealed amphora on your bench, containing one of the most enigmatic materials in all of Alexandria, rock crystal. These are pieces of pure, colorless quartz, so clear they look like fragments of the very ice the northern barbarians speak of. You pour them onto a black linen cloth, and the sound is a bright, shattering clink. They are cold to the touch, and when you look through them, the world is inverted and sharpened, a miniature Alexandria captured within a frozen tear. You have been commissioned to create a set of gaming pieces for a high-ranking Roman administrator, a man who values the clarity of logic above all else. For this, you will not use thread or silk, but will instead polish each crystal into a perfect, uniform orb. You begin by using a slurry of fine sand and water, rubbing the crystals against a flat basalt stone. The sound is a rhythmic grind-hiss, a labor-intensive music that demands the full strength of your shoulders. As the rough edges wear away, the crystal begins to reveal its inner light, shedding its stony skin to become something celestial. The water in the tray becomes cloudy with the dust of the mountains, a milky suspension that hides the treasure beneath. By midday, the sun is a white hammer in the sky, and the courtyard is a kiln of reflected light. You move into the deepest shade of the jasmine trellis, the cool green leaves offering a respite for your eyes. The grind hiss continues, a steady, hypnotic pulse. You feel the heat of friction in the stones, the quartz warming under your palms until it feels like a living thing. You use a magnifying glass of polished beryl to inspect the surfaces, looking for any hidden fractures that might shatter under the pressure of the game. The clarity you seek is absolute. Even the smallest cloud of inclusion would be a failure of your art. The fountain's splashing is a frantic, busy sound today, as if the water itself is trying to cool the air. As the afternoon light begins to shift toward amber, you transition to the final polishing. You use a piece of soft buckskin and a powder made of crushed shells. This stage is silent, a gentle swish-swish that slowly brings the crystal to a mirror finish. One by one, the orbs are completed. They sit on the black linen like drops of dew that refuse to evaporate. You pick one up, and the world behind it is focused into a single brilliant point of light. These stones do not have the warmth of amber or the passion of coral. They are objects of pure, detached intellect. You place them into a grid-lined box of ebony, where they look like stars caught in a dark net. The final task is to create the king piece, which you decide to leave as a natural double-terminated crystal point, polished only on its facets. This piece carries a different energy, a reminder of the stone's original geometry. As you set it into its velvet niche, the click of the wood meeting the crystal is a sharp, definitive note. The day's work has been a struggle against hardness and transparency, a battle to make the invisible visible. You wash the sand and dust from your hands in the fountain, the cool water a benediction. As you lock the courtyard gate, the silver moon is already rising, a perfect glowing orb that mirrors the crystals on your bench, and you walk home in the quiet clarity of a task perfectly realized. The morning air is brittle, carrying a scent of dry papyrus and aged wine from the harbour warehouses. You step into the courtyard and find a leather pouch waiting, filled with stones that seem to have captured the very essence of a storm. Labradorite. These are grey, unassuming rocks at first glance, but as you spill them onto the cedar bench, the light hits them at an angle, and they erupt with a sudden electric flash of peacock blue and oily gold. The sound of them falling is a dense, metallic clack, a heavy vibration that lingers in the wood. They are the stones of transformation, a perfect material for a merchant who wishes to commemorate a successful voyage across the treacherous Mediterranean. You decide to string these stones on a cord of braided hemp, a rough and honest material that reflects the maritime nature of the commission. As you begin the first hole, the bow drill emits a low grinding hum. Labradorite is a deceptive stone, brittle in its layers but hard against the bit. The whir grind of the tool becomes the morning's meditation. You feel the dust, a fine grey powder, coating your knuckles. Each time a bead is finished, you wipe it with an oiled rag, and the hidden labradorescence flares up like a signal fire in the dark. It is a magical interaction between light and mineral, a secret revealed only to those who take the time to look. By the time the sun is high enough to reach the fountain, the courtyard is a symphony of blue and grey. The thud-click of the beads meeting on the hemp cord is a rugged rhythm, less refined than the pearls but more vital. You intersperse the labradorite with small weathered pieces of silver that have been hammered to look like fish scales. The tink of the silver against the stone adds a high metallic note to the deeper percussion of the gems. You work with a steady rhythmic breathing, your movements synchronized with the swaying of the jasmine vines. The scent of the flowers is lighter today, almost masked by the mineral smell of the stone dust. Midday brings a shift in the wind, carrying the distant chime of bells from a temple near the Serapeum. You pause to drink a bowl of cool water, watching the way the labradorite on your bench changes, from dull slate to brilliant azure, as the clouds pass over the sun. You think of the ships navigating by the stars, their hulls battered by the same waves that smoothed these stones over millennia. You return to the bench, the thud, click, tink, continuing its steady march toward completion. The hemp cord is rough against your fingers, but it provides a grip and a security that silk could never match for such a heavy, energetic piece. As the afternoon light begins to fail, you reach the final knot. It is a large, complex sailor's hitch, reinforced with a bit of beeswax to ensure it never unravels. The necklace is a heavy, commanding object, shimmering with a dark, oceanic fire. You pick it up, and the stones feel alive in your hands, shifting their colours with every slight movement of your wrist. You place the piece in a box made of salvaged ship timber, the wood still smelling of brine and old adventures. As you lock the courtyard gate, the click of the bolt is a firm final period at the end of a long sentence. You walk home through the twilight, the memory of the blue flashes dancing in your mind like the lights of the harbour reflecting on a restless sea. The following morning brings a sky the colour of a bruised plum, heavy with the threat of a summer downpour that never quite breaks. You enter the courtyard to find a small, intricately carved ivory box resting on your bench. Inside, cushioned by the finest Egyptian cotton, lies a collection of garnets, dark, brooding stones that look like drops of congealed wine or the seeds of a pomegranate. You spill them onto the cedar and they make a sharp, aggressive clink-clink, a sound that is both crystalline and dense. These are the stones of passion and health, believed to protect the wearer from the plague and the melancholy of the soul. You run your fingers through the pile, feeling their coolness, their sharp facets catching the muted light and throwing back deep, blood-red sparks. You have been asked to create a set of funerary jewelry for a noble woman who passed peacefully in her sleep. These pieces are not for the living, but for the eternal journey through the duat. For this sacred task, you choose a thread of pure gold wire, as thin as a human hair but remarkably strong. The gold will not rot in the tomb. It will remain as a constant companion to the spirit. You begin by forming a small loop at one end of the wire. As you slide the first garnet on, the sound is a delicate ting, the metal meeting the stone with a resonance that feels holy. You work with a level of reverence that is different from your usual focus. Every movement is a prayer for the departed. The morning progresses in a quiet, somber rhythm. The courtyard is filled with the scent of damp earth and the heavy, sweet aroma of the lilies that grow near the fountain. You use a pair of fine silver pliers to bend the gold wire into delicate coils between the garnets, creating a pattern that mimics the flow of the Nile. The ting-snap of the wire being shaped and the stones being set creates a fragile, rhythmic music. You feel the weight of the task. You are creating a map of beauty for a soul navigating the darkness. The fountain splashing sounds like a distant rhythmic weeping today, a soft background to the metallic precision of your bench. By midday, the heat is stifling, the air thick and unmoving. You take a sip of cool, watered wine, the tartness refreshing your palate as you study the progress. The garnets seem to absorb the heat, becoming warm to the touch, their deep red color intensifying until they look like glowing coals. You reach for the central piece, a large, heart-shaped garnet that has been polished but not faceted. It is smooth and deep, representing the heart that will be weighed against the feather of Ma'at. You wrap it in a cage of gold wire, a delicate construction of geometry and grace. The ting, as the gold settles against the stone, is a sound of finality and protection. As the afternoon light begins to fade into a dusty orange, you complete the last of the funerary strands. The set, a necklace, 2 bracelets, and a pair of drop earrings, shimmers on the cedar bench like a constellation of blood and sun. You pick them up, and the gold wire is surprisingly supple, moving with a liquid grace that belies its strength. You place the jewelry into a sarcophagus-shaped box of ebony and gold leaf, the red stones looking like embers in the dark. As you tidy the workshop, the first real drops of rain begin to fall, washing the dust from the jasmine leaves. You lock the gate, the click of the bolt, a soft, respectful closing of a life's chapter, and walk into the cooling rain, the deep wine red of the garnets lingering in your heart like a silent, eternal flame. The morning following the rain is bathed in a crystalline light that seems to sharpen every edge in the courtyard. On your bench lies a small, heavy pouch made of dyed purple leather, containing stones of a most peculiar nature, moonstones. These are not the flashy electric gems of the desert, but shy, ethereal stones that possess a milky opalescence. You pour them onto the cedar, and they make a soft, muffled clack, a sound that feels rounded and gentle. When the light hits them, a ghostly blue sheen and adolescence drifts across their surface like moonlight trapped in a cloud. These are stones for the dreamers, the poets, and those who walk the silver path of the goddess Selene. You are commissioned to create a pectoral for a priestess of the moon, a piece that must be as light as a whisper and as luminous as the night sky. For this you select a thread of silver silk, so fine it is almost invisible to the naked eye. You begin by knotting the end of the silk around a small hammered silver crescent. As you slide the first moonstone into place, the sound is a quiet, liquid thip. It is a sound of water and air. You work with a slow, rhythmic patience, for the moonstone is a sensitive gem, prone to clouding if handled with too much force. The courtyard is filled with the scent of wet limestone and the fresh, green smell of the revitalized jasmine. By midday, the sun is high, but the white-blue glow of the moonstones seems to repel the harsh yellow light. You intersperse the stones with tiny seeds of clear rock crystal, creating a texture that mimics the star-dusted belt of the heavens. The thip clink of the stones and crystals meeting is a delicate, high-pitched melody, a song of the night played in the middle of the day. You feel a sense of weightlessness in your hands, as if the jewelry itself wants to float away from the bench. The fountain's splashing is a bright, silver shimmer in the background, its rhythm perfectly aligned with the steady movement of your silver needle. In the afternoon, you reach for the focal point, a large oval moonstone of exceptional quality. It is nearly transparent, yet it holds a deep, glowing blue core that shifts with every movement of your head. You frame it in a delicate lattice of silver wire, a web of metal designed to catch the light from all angles. The ting of the silver pliers against the stone is a sharp musical note that breaks the midday silence. You feel the coolness of the stone through your fingertips, a refreshing contrast to the growing warmth of the courtyard. You are not just threading beads, you are capturing the essence of the night and weaving it into a form that can be worn by the light of day. As the sun begins to dip toward the great harbour, the pectoral is finished. It lies on the bench like a fragment of the moon fallen to earth, glowing with a soft internal light that seems to defy the coming shadows. You pick it up, and the silver silk and stones drape over your hand with a fluid, ghostly grace. You place the piece in a box of polished sandalwood, the scent of the wood adding a layer of sacredness to the silver treasure. As you tidy your tools, the first stars begin to appear in the violet sky. You lock the gate, the click of the bolt, a soft silver echo of the day's labour, and walk into the evening, the blue-white glow of the moonstone still shimmering in your mind like a distant, eternal promise. The sun rises over Alexandria with a golden intensity that turns the harbour into a sheet of beaten brass. You walk into the courtyard, your footsteps echoing on the stone, and find a small reed-woven basket sitting on your bench. Inside, wrapped in papyrus leaves, are chunks of raw peridot, the emeralds of the sun. These stones were brought from the volcanic island of Topazos in the Red Sea, and they possess a unique, oily green shimmer that glows even in the shadows. You spill them onto the cedar, and the sound is a crisp, lively click-clack, like the sound of dry beans hitting a wooden floor. The colour is a vibrant yellowish green, the exact shade of the young vines climbing your courtyard walls. You have been tasked with creating a celebratory necklace for a farmer who has seen a record harvest along the Nile. He wants something that represents the fertility of the land and the favour of the gods. For this, you choose a cord of twisted gold-coloured silk, strong and supple. You begin by grading the peridot, selecting the clearest pieces that resemble droplets of liquid sunlight. As you slide the first stone onto the silk, the sound is a bright, glassy tink. It is a joyful sound, full of life and the energy of the earth. You work with a sense of vigour, your hands moving with a rhythmic efficiency that reflects the farmer's own labour in the fields. By midday, the heat is palpable, but the peridot seems to thrive in the brilliance. The stones catch the vertical rays of the sun and scatter them into dancing green spots across your chest and the workbench. You intersperse the green stones with small, sun-dried kernels of aromatic wood, creating a piece that smells as earthy as it looks. The tink-thud of the peridot meeting the wood is a grounded agricultural rhythm. The courtyard is filled with the hum of cicadas, a vibrating wall of sound that matches the intensity of the green fire on your bench. You feel a deep connection to the cycle of the seasons, the eternal dance of growth and harvest. In the afternoon, you reach for the centerpiece, a large faceted peridot shaped like a grain of wheat. It is a masterpiece of the lapidary's art, its internal planes reflecting light in a way that makes the stone appear to be burning from within. You secure it with a series of sturdy decorative knots, ensuring it sits at the very heart of the necklace. The snap of the silk as you tighten the final hitch is a sound of completion and prosperity. You hold the necklace up, and the green stones vibrate against the gold silk, a vision of the Nile Valley in full bloom. It is a heavy, substantial piece, built to be worn during festivals and feasts of Thanksgiving. As the shadows begin to stretch and the air takes on the scent of roasting meat from a nearby tavern, You place the necklace into a box of simple, unpainted sycamore. The green stones look like hidden treasures nestled in the pale wood. You wash the fine green dust from your hands, watching it swirl into the fountain's basin like a cloud of emerald smoke. The work of the day has been a celebration of life's abundance, a tribute to the sun that feeds the world. You lock the gate, the clunk of the bolt a solid, satisfied end to the day's labor, and walk into the golden evening, the vibrant, sun-soaked green of the peridot still glowing in your spirit, like a promise of a bountiful future. The air of the morning is thin and crisp, carrying the scent of dry parchment and the faint, bitter aroma of medicinal herbs from the healer's quarter. On your bench lies a small linen-wrapped bundle containing stones of a most peculiar and ancient origin, malachite. These are not translucent gems that play with light. They are opaque, swirling masses of vibrant forest green and deep, mossy black. You pour them onto the cedar, and they make a dull, earthy clop-clop, a sound that is dense and grounded like the hooves of a donkey on a dirt path. The banded patterns on the stones look like the concentric rings of a fallen tree or the topographical lines of a mountain range. You have been commissioned to create a heavy talisman for a scribe who has lost the strength in his writing hand. Malachite is the stone of healing and transformation, believed to draw out the aches of the body and restore the flow of vital energy. For this you choose a thick, sturdy cord of dark brown leather, as durable and reliable as the earth itself. You begin by sorting the stones, looking for those with the most complex and soothing patterns. As you slide the first malachite bead onto the leather, the sound is a soft, muffled thud. It is a quiet, restorative sound, lacking the sharp aggression of the harder minerals. The morning light reveals a fine layer of dust on the workbench, which you wipe away with a damp cloth, the smell of wet cedar rising to meet the green aroma of the stones. You work with a steady grounding rhythm, interspersing the malachite with small polished beads of copper. Malachite is a copper-based mineral, and the pairing feels alchemical and right. The tink of the copper against the stone provides a subtle metallic accent to the earthy clop of the beads. The courtyard is quiet today. Even the fountain seems to flow with a more subdued meditative trickle. You feel the weight of the scribe's struggle in your hands, and you pour your own focus into the knots, making them tight and certain. By midday, the heat has settled into the stones, making the malachite feel warm and alive under your touch. You take a moment to sharpen your iron awl on the whetstone, the shur sound a familiar companion to your thoughts. You think about the power of symbols, how a simple arrangement of green stone and copper can provide hope to a man whose livelihood depends on the grace of his fingers. You reach for the central piece, a large, teardrop-shaped slab of malachite that features a perfect, bullseye-like pattern of light and dark green. You wrap it in a simple, elegant frame of copper wire, securing it to the leather cord with a series of heavy protective hitches. As the afternoon sun begins to cast long, verdant shadows through the jasmine, the talisman is complete. It is a substantial piece, possessing a gravity that seems to pull the wearer toward the center of the earth. You pick it up, and the cooling malachite feels like a soothing balm against your palm. You place the piece in a box of dark, unpolished walnut, the wood grain complementing the swirls of the stone. As you tidy the workshop for the night, you feel a sense of quiet satisfaction. You have created an object of healing, a bridge between the mineral world and the human spirit. You lock the gate, the clack of the iron bolts sounding like a final firm blessing on the day's work, and walk home into the green twilight, the steady rhythmic energy of the malachite still pulsing in your veins. The morning arrives with a pale silver mist that rolls in from the great harbour, dampening the jasmine leaves until they bow under the weight of the dew. Waiting on your bench is a small silk-lined pouch containing stones that seem to have captured the very essence of the dawn, opals. These are not the solid, predictable gems of the earth, but flickering, mercurial treasures that dance with play of colour. You pour them onto the dark cedar, and they make a light, clicking sound like the titter-tatter of rain on a marble floor. One moment they are milky and quiet. The next they erupt in flashes of neon green, electric blue, and sunset orange as the mist outside begins to thin. You have been commissioned by a poet of the Mausian to create a circlet that aids in the conjuring of visions. The poet believes that opals are the tears of the gods shed during the creation of the world. For this delicate task, you choose a fine wire of hammered electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver. Electrum possesses a pale moonlight glow that complements the shifting fire of the opals without overwhelming them. You begin by twisting the wire into a vine-like structure, the creak snap of the metal echoing softly in the damp air of the courtyard. Every bend in the wire is deliberate, meant to mimic the organic chaos of the natural world. As the sun burns through the mist, the courtyard transforms into a kaleidoscope of light. You pick up the first opal, a small sphere that glows with a hidden interior fire. As you set it into a tiny electrum claw, the sound is a delicate click, a fragile union of stone and metal. You work with a lightness of touch that borders on the ethereal. Opals are notorious for their sensitivity to heat and pressure, and a single clumsy move could cause the stone to lose its water content and crack. The scent of the courtyard is heavy with the smell of wet limestone and the sweet, lingering perfume of the jasmine flowers, which seem to glow with a reflected light from your bench. By midday, the circlet is halfway finished, a delicate web of electrum and shifting fire. You take a break to drink a bowl of cool goat's milk, watching how the light plays across the finished sections. The opals seem to change their personality every minute. In the direct sun, they are fierce and vibrant, but in the shade of the trellis, they become soft, glowing embers of violet and rose. You feel a sense of wonder at the fluidity of the material. It is a reminder that beauty is often found in the most unstable and fleeting of forms. You return to the bench, the click, click, click of the stones being set, acting as a rhythmic pulse for your creativity. As the afternoon light mellows into a deep honeyed gold, you reach the final stone, a large teardrop-shaped black opal from the distant southern mines. It possesses a dark oceanic base color, through which streaks of brilliant red and gold flash, like lightning in a midnight storm. This will be the focal point of the circlet resting upon the poet's brow. You secure it with extra care, the electrum wires wrapping around it like the protective arms of a lover. The ting of the final wire being trimmed is a sharp, musical note that signals the end of the labor. You hold the circlet up, and it shimmers with an almost supernatural intensity, a crown of captured dreams. You place the circlet into a box of fragrant sandalwood, lined with the softest white swandown. The opals continue to flicker in the dimming light of the workshop, as if they are whispering to one another in a language of color. As you tidy your tools, the fountain's splashing sounds like the soft applause of a distant audience. You have created an object that defies the permanence of stone, a piece that lives and breathes with the light. You lock the gate, the clunk of the bolt, a grounding reminder of the physical world, and walk home under a sky that is beginning to mirror the very opals you have just spent the day taming. The following day breaks with a wind that feels older than the city itself, blowing in from the vast, silent dunes of the interior. It carries a fine golden dust that settles upon the jasmine leaves and the cedar bench like a layer of powdered sunlight. You arrive to find a heavy iron-bound chest waiting for you. Inside, buried in protective layers of raw wool, are massive chunks of citrine, the merchant's stone. These are crystals of burnt honey and pale amber light, transparent as the air of a desert morning and hard as the resolve of a king. You spill them onto the table, and the sound is a bold, resonant clatter-clank, a masculine and confident noise that fills the courtyard with its vibration. You have been commissioned to create a heavy chain of office for a newly appointed magistrate of the grain markets. The piece must radiate authority, clarity, and wealth. For this you choose thick, rectangular links of solid bronze, which you will alternate with the golden stones. You begin by heating the bronze over a small charcoal brazier until it glows a dull cherry red. The whoosh of the bellows and the sharp metallic scent of the hot metal bring a sense of industry to the quiet morning. As you hammer the links into shape, the clink-clang becomes the heartbeat of the workshop, a rhythmic declaration of strength and order. By the time the sun is high, the air in the courtyard is shimmering with heat. You quench the bronze links in the fountain, the hiss steam sound a sudden cooling relief. You begin the task of faceting the citrin, using a spinning lapidary wheel driven by a foot pedal. The whir grind of the stone against the wheel creates a fine golden mist of dust that coats your arms and face. Each facet you cut reveals a new depth of golden light within the stone, turning the raw crystals into miniature suns. The scent of the burning charcoal lingers, mixing with the sweet, heavy perfume of the jasmine that seems to thrive in the intense heat of the day. In the afternoon, you begin the assembly. You use a heavy iron needle to thread the bronze links through the golden stones, securing them with thick hand-drawn wire. The clink-clack of the citrin meeting the bronze is a solid, satisfying sound. It is a piece that feels permanent, built to endure the pressures of the court and the passage of generations. You feel the weight of the magistrate's responsibility in the heft of the chain. Between the citrins, you engrave small symbols of the harvest, sheaves of wheat and scales of justice, into the flat surfaces of the bronze. The scritch of your engraving tool is a precise, intimate sound against the broad strokes of the morning's work. As the sun begins to dip behind the great library, casting long golden shadows across the courtyard, the chain is finished. It lies on the bench like a river of molten gold, glowing with an internal fire that seems to command the light to stay. You pick it up and the weight is substantial, the cold bronze and warm stone creating a tactile balance of power. You place the chain into a box of dark, polished oak where it sits with a regal, heavy dignity. As you wash the golden dust from your hands, the fountain's splashing sounds like the counting of coins in a quiet treasury. You lock the gate, the thunk of the bolt a final authoritative note, and walk home through the amber twilight, the solid, unwavering glow of the citrine still burning in your mind's eye. The morning air is thick and still, carrying the heavy scent of incense from the nearby temple of Serapis. On your bench, nestled within a small velvet-lined box, lies a collection of tiger's eye stones, liquid gold and chocolate-brown stripes that seem to shift and move like the fur of a great predator. You pour them out, and they produce a dense, clicking clack-clack, a sound that is earthy and fibrous. These stones possess a fierce chatoyancy. As you tilt them, a band of light gallops across the surface like a reflection on moving water. They are the stones of the warrior's spirit, intended to grant courage and sharp vision to those who walk through the shadows of life. You have been commissioned to create a heavy belt for a gladiator who has recently won his freedom and now serves as a private bodyguard. He wants a piece that embodies both his past struggle and his current strength. For this, you choose a thick band of dark, oil-tanned ox hide, smelling of salt and ancient forests. You begin by punching holes into the leather with a heavy iron awl, the thud punch echoing against the stone walls of the courtyard. The leather is resistant, requiring the full weight of your shoulder, a physical labor that mirrors the grit of the man for whom you build. As the sun climbs higher, the jasmine vines cast dappled shadows across the workspace, making the tiger's eye stones appear even more lifelike. You begin to set the stones into heavy bronze bezels that you have hammered into the shape of lion claws. The tink-tink-tink of the small hammer as you roll the metal over the edges of the stones is a rhythmic metallic song. Each stone is locked into place with a permanence that suggests it will never be moved. The scent of the courtyard changes as the sun warms the leather and the bronze, creating a primal, musk-like aroma that feels fitting for the task at hand. By midday, the belt is taking shape, a formidable ornament of leather, bronze, and shifting golden light. You take a moment to sharpen your knife on a whetstone, the shur providing a sharp, clean contrast to the heavy work. You think of the arena, the dust, and the roar of the crowd, and you infuse that intensity into the way you burnish the edges of the hide. The fountain splashing is a relentless driving force today, matching the pace of your own heartbeat as you work. You reach for the buckle, a massive piece of cast bronze shaped like a sunburst, and begin the process of riveting it to the leather. The bang-clat of the rivets being set is a final, percussive statement of durability. In the late afternoon, as the light turns to a deep, burnt orange, you apply a final layer of beeswax to the leather, rubbing it in until the hide glows with a rich, dark luster. The tiger's eye stones seem to watch you from the bench, their golden bands glowing with a predatory intensity. You pick up the finished belt, and its weight is a comfort, a tactile promise of protection. You place it in a crate of rough-hewn pine, the smell of the wood mixing with the scent of the tanned hide. As you tidy the workshop, the shadows of the jasmine stretch like reaching fingers across the floor. You lock the gate, the clunk of the bolt a solid and certain end to the day, and walk out into the cooling city, the watchful golden gaze of the tiger's eye still flickering in your thoughts. Part 37. The morning air is crisp and carries the sharp, resinous scent of cedar smoke from a neighbour's hearth. On your bench, resting upon a square of undyed linen, is a collection of lapis lazuli from the distant mountains of Badakhshan. These are not the pale, mottled stones of lesser quality, but a deep celestial blue, the colour of the sky at the exact moment twilight turns to night. Sprinkled throughout the blue are tiny, glittering flecks of golden pyrite, like distant galaxies trapped in stone. You pour them from their pouch, and they make a heavy, regal clack-clack, a sound that is dense, ancient, and undeniably royal. You are crafting a signet ring and a matching pendant for a scholar of the great library, a man who spends his nights tracing the movements of the stars. He desires a set that reflects the infinite wisdom of the cosmos. For the ring, you choose a heavy shank of solid 22-carat gold, its buttery yellow hue the perfect companion to the deep blue stone. You begin by carving the lapis into a smooth oval cabochon. The rasping of the file against the stone produces a fine, ultramarine dust that stains your fingertips blue, a mark of the trade that you wear with a quiet pride. As the sun rises higher, the jasmine in the courtyard seems to lean toward the light, its fragrance mingling with the metallic tang of the gold you are heating in your small crucible. You pour the molten metal into a charcoal mold, the hiss of the cooling gold a sudden sharp intake of breath in the quiet workshop. Once the ring setting is cast, you begin the delicate process of engraving the scholar's personal seal into the surface of the lapis. The scritch of the diamond-tipped burin is an intimate, precise sound, requiring a steady hand and a held breath. You carve the image of an owl perched upon a scroll, the lines so fine they are almost invisible to the naked eye. By midday, the heat of the Alexandria sun has warmed the stone bench, but the lapis remains cool to the touch, a piece of the night that refuses to succumb to the day. You take a brief rest, eating a handful of dried dates and drinking cold water from a clay jar. The fountain's splashing is a rhythmic, hypnotic background to your thoughts. You return to the bench to begin the pendant, which will be a larger, flat slab of lapis held in a delicate gold frame. You decide to leave the pyrite flecks as the primary ornamentation, arranging the gold prongs to look like the rays of a sun reaching out to touch the stars. In the afternoon, you polish the gold until it shines with a mirror-like finish, the swish-swish of the leather strop a soothing conclusion to the day's labour. When you set the engraved lapis into the ring, the click of the gold bezel being burnished over the stone's edge is a sound of perfect alignment. You hold the set up to the light, and the deep blue of the lapis seems to swallow the sun, while the pyrite stars dance on its surface. It is a piece of the heavens brought down to earth, a talisman for a seeker of truth. As the shadows of the courtyard walls begin to stretch across the floor, you place the ring and pendant into a box of polished ebony, the dark wood providing a stark, beautiful contrast to the gold and blue. You wash the blue dust from your hands in the fountain, the water turning a faint magical azure for a fleeting moment. The day's work has been a journey through the stars, and as you lock the gate, the clunk of the bolt is a firm, satisfying end to the transit. You walk home under a sky that is just beginning to match the stones on your bench, the golden pyrite of the first evening stars winking at you from above. The morning air carries a peculiar weight, a stillness that feels charged with the scent of ancient resin and sun-baked clay. On your bench lies a bundle of rough, uncut stones that look like frozen honey or droplets of hardened sunlight, citrine and honey-coloured quartz. These stones are clear as the air over the desert, and when you pour them out, they make a bright, ringing tink-tink that echoes off the limestone walls of the courtyard. You have been commissioned to create a pectoral for a young scribe who has just completed his apprenticeship. a piece that symbolizes the clarity of mind and the warmth of a new beginning. For this project, you choose a fine hand-drawn wire of yellow gold, which you have spent the previous evening preparing. The wire is thin enough to be delicate, but strong enough to hold the weight of the faceted gems. You begin by shaping the central frame, a geometric pattern that mimics the rays of the rising sun. The snip-snap of the cutters and the tink of the hammer against the gold are the first notes of the day's song. As you work, the jasmine vines overhead sway slightly in the breeze, dropping a single white blossom onto the bench, a small fragrant blessing for the task at hand. By midday, the heat of Alexandria has intensified, and the courtyard is flooded with a brilliant white light. You begin the process of faceting the raw stones. Using a small pedal-driven lapidary wheel, you grind the first piece of citrine. The whir grind of the wheel produces a fine golden dust that coats your fingertips and the wooden bench. As each facet is polished, the stone begins to catch the light, refracting it into 1,000 tiny rainbows that dance across your chest. The sound of the polishing is a rhythmic shir-shir, a soothing sound that allows your mind to wander into the history of the earth that created such beauty. You take a short break to wash your face in the cool water of the fountain, the splish-splash a refreshing contrast to the dry heat of the workshop. You return to the bench to begin the setting. One by one, you secure the golden stones into their gold wire cages. The click of the metal closing over the stone is a sound of permanence. You intersperse the citrine with small beads of clear rock crystal, which act like droplets of water caught in the sun's rays. The tink-clink of the materials meeting on the wire creates a complex musical texture that feels alive and vibrant. As the afternoon shadows lengthen, you reach the final stage of the pectoral. You attach a series of small gold charms, miniature scrolls and pens to the bottom of the piece. These represent the scribe's new life and his dedication to his craft. The jingle-jangle of the gold as you move the piece is a celebratory sound, a joyous end to a day of focused labor. You hold the pectoral up to the setting sun, and it glows with a fierce internal fire, as if it has swallowed a piece of the day itself. You place the finished piece into a box of polished cedar, the scent of the wood mingling with the fading perfume of the jasmine. As you tidy your tools, the fountain's steady pulse remains the only sound in the deepening twilight. You have created more than just jewelry. You have created a beacon for a young man's future. You lock the gate, the clunk of the bolt a definitive end to the day's journey, and walk home through the cooling city, the golden light of the citron still warm in your heart. The dawn is a pale, bruised violet, and the air smells of wet sand and the bitter smoke of olive wood. You find a small, lead-weighted jar on your bench sealed with green wax. Inside, submerged in a bath of scented oil to preserve their luster, are pearls, not the white, pristine globes of the Persian Gulf, but rare peacock-coloured pearls from the southern reaches of the Red Sea. They are dark, iridescent, and carry a metallic sheen of oil-slick green, deep purple, and charcoal grey. You pour them onto a piece of black silk, and they roll with a soft velvet hush-hush, a sound that is muted and mysterious like the secrets of the deep. You are creating a mourning ring for a widow whose husband was a sea captain lost to the great sea. For this you select a band of heavy blackened silver, its dark patina a symbol of grief and the depths of the abyss. You begin by carving a recess into the silver, the rasp scrape of the file a harsh rhythmic sound that cuts through the morning's stillness. The fine silver shavings look like grey ash falling onto the bench. There is a weight to this work, a solemnity that makes you move slower, each gesture deliberate and respectful of the memory it honours. As the sun rises, it does not bring its usual cheer. The clouds are low and heavy, casting the courtyard in a sombre, diffused light. You pick up the central pearl, a large teardrop-shaped gem that shifts from midnight blue to a ghostly emerald. You drill a tiny hole into its base. The whir-zip of the hand drill a high, lonesome sound. You feel the organic resistance of the pearl. It is different from stone, more brittle and alive. The scent of the jasmine is faint today, almost drowned out by the metallic smell of the silver and the briny, oceanic tang of the oil-soaked pearls. By midday, the fountain's splashing sounds like the steady drip of rain. You begin the setting, surrounding the dark pearl with tiny blackened silver thorns. The tink-tink of your hammer is a sharp, percussive heartbeat. You are not just building a ring, you are anchoring a memory. Between the thorns, you set microscopic grains of black onyx, which make a dry click as they find their seats. The contrast between the matte onyx and the iridescent pearl creates a visual depth that seems to pull the eye inward toward a place of quiet reflection. In the afternoon, you polish the silver highlights just enough to catch the light, a process that makes a soft swish-swish against the leather strop. The ring is a dark masterpiece, a piece of the sea's soul captured in metal and gem. You pick it up, and the cold silver and smooth pearl feel like a heavy anchor in your palm. You place the ring into a small box made of driftwood, lined with salt-crusted linen. It is a humble, honest vessel for such a poignant treasure. As you tidy the courtyard, the wind begins to pick up, whistling through the jasmine vines with a low, mournful sigh. You wash your hands, the water from the fountain feeling like a cold benediction. The day's work has been a meditation on loss and the enduring beauty that can be found in the shadows. You lock the gate, the thud of the iron bolt a final hollow sound in the twilight, and walk home as the first real rain begins to fall, the dark shifting colors of the peacock pearl lingering in your mind like a ghost of the deep. The morning air is crisp, carrying the scent of dry earth and the distant metallic tang of the harbor's ironworks. On your cedar bench lies a small leather-bound box containing stones that look like frozen fragments of a winter sky, aquamarine. These are not the dark, brooding blues of the lapis, but a pale, crystalline cyan, as clear as the shallow waters surrounding the Pharos. You spill them onto the wood, and they make a light musical tinkle-tink, a sound like shattering glass or the first ice of the season. They are stones of clarity and protection for those who travel by water, believed to be the treasure of mermaids washed ashore. You have been commissioned to create a delicate headpiece for a young bride whose family originates from the coastal islands. She wants something that captures the movement of the waves and the purity of the sea. For this, you choose a fine wire of white silver, drawn out until it is as flexible as silk thread. You begin by twisting the silver into intricate swirling patterns that mimic the foam of a breaking wave. The creak twist of the metal is the only sound in the quiet courtyard, a delicate percussion that marks the start of your day. The jasmine vines above are still damp with dew, and a single drop falls onto the silver, glistening like one of the gems you are about to set. By midday, the sun has burned away the morning haze, and the courtyard is a sanctuary of white light. You begin the process of shaping the aquamarines into small, smooth cabochons. Using a fine-grained sandstone, you rub the stones in a rhythmic shish-shish motion, the sound as steady as the tide. As you work, the pale blue dust coats your fingers, smelling faintly of minerals and salt. The stones transition from rough pebbles to luminous drops of water, catching the vertical rays of the sun and casting soft, flickering blue shadows across your workspace. The fountain's splashing is a bright, cheerful accompaniment, its cadence perfectly matching the fluid nature of your design. In the afternoon, you begin the assembly. You use a tiny silver needle to thread the aquamarines into the silver wave lattice. The click of the stones meeting the silver is a sharp, clean note. Between the blue gems, you intersperse small polished grains of white coral, which make a soft thup as they are secured. The combination of the icy blue and the bone white creates a piece that feels cool to the touch, even in the heat of the afternoon. You feel the joy of the upcoming celebration in the lightness of the materials. This is not a piece of authority or grief, but one of hope and new beginnings. As the shadows begin to lengthen, turning the courtyard walls to a warm ochre, you add the final touches. You attach small hammered silver discs to the ends of the headpiece, designed to dingle and catch the light as the bride moves. The jingle clink of the silver is a playful, festive sound that signals the completion of the work. You hold the headpiece up, and it shimmers like the surface of the Mediterranean at noon, a crown of water and light. It is fragile yet enduring, much like the vows it is intended to honor. You place the headpiece into a box of pale linden wood lined with sea blue silk. The aquamarines seem to glow with a soft internal light in the dimming workshop. As you tidy your tools, the first evening breeze stirs the jasmine, carrying the scent of the sea deep into the courtyard. You wash the silver and stone dust from your hands, the water from the fountain feeling like a cold, refreshing spray. You lock the gate, the clat of the bolt a soft final note, and walk home through the lavender twilight, the pale, watery blue of the aquamarine still shimmering in your mind like a distant horizon. The morning arrives with a dry, searing heat that speaks of the deep desert, carrying a fine grit that makes the jasmine leaves appear as though they have been dusted with gold. On your cedar bench you find a heavy ceramic jar, its lid sealed with black pitch. Inside, nestled in dry sand, are raw chunks of hematite, the bloodstone of the ancients. These stones are deceptively heavy, possessing a dull, metallic grey exterior that hides a brilliant, mirror-like luster once polished. You pour them out, and they hit the wood with a profound metallic thud clank, a sound of gravity and iron. When scratched against a rough surface, they leave a streak of deep, rusty red, a reminder of the life force believed to be trapped within the mineral. You have been commissioned by a veteran centurion of the Roman legions to create a heavy protection amulet. He seeks a piece that will ground his spirit and deflect the evil eye during his upcoming deployment to the eastern frontier. For this, you choose a thick, braided cord of black horsehair, a material as resilient and tough as the soldier himself. You begin by grinding the hematite into smooth, cylindrical beads. The grind hiss of the stone against the abrasive basalt is a grueling physical task. The air in the courtyard becomes thick with the scent of iron and ozone, a sharp electric smell that pierces through the heavy perfume of the sun-baked jasmine. By midday, the sun is a white-hot coin in the sky, and the courtyard feels like a forge. You move to the final polishing stage for the hematite, using a slurry of water and iron oxide. The shir of the polishing cloth is a hypnotic metallic whisper. As the dull grey skin falls away, the beads emerge as brilliant liquid silver mirrors, reflecting the courtyard and your own focused face with startling clarity. The clack of these finished beads against one another is sharp and high-pitched, like the striking of swords. You feel the strength of the material. It is a stone that does not yield, a stone that demands respect and force. In the afternoon, you begin the assembly, threading the heavy metallic beads onto the stiff horsehair cord. Between each hematite cylinder you tie a complex soldier's knot, the snap of the hair cord as it tightens providing a rhythmic punctuation to the work. The focal point of the amulet is a large, flat disc of hematite which you have engraved with the image of a charging bull, the symbol of the centurion's legion. The scratch of your iron stylus against the polished surface is a slow, methodical process, requiring you to fight the stone for every line. The fountain's splashing is a frantic, busy sound today, as if trying to cool the very air that the hematite has turned to iron. As the shadows grow long and the sky transitions to a dusty blood-orange hue, the amulet is complete. It is a heavy, commanding object, cold to the touch and gleaming with a dark, mirror-like intensity. You pick it up, and the weight hangs from your hand with a reassuring solidness, a tether to the physical world. You place the piece in a box of dark, oil-rubbed bronze, where it sits like a coiled spring of energy. As you tidy the workshop, the smell of iron lingers on your skin, a reminder of the day's battle with the bloodstone. You lock the gate for the final time this season, the clank of the iron bolt a final, resonant echo of the armor you have just crafted. You walk home through the cooling city, leaving the bench to the moonlight, the dark mirrored surface of the hematite remaining in your mind as a silent, unbreakable shield against the coming night.
Sleepy History Tales is created for relaxation, entertainment, and sleep purposes.
The stories shared on this channel are inspired by historical events, daily life, and real periods in history, but they may be simplified, adapted, or narrated in a calming way to enhance the listening experience. This content is not intended to be a precise academic or educational source. While we aim to stay generally accurate, some details may be altered for storytelling flow and relaxation.
Please do not rely on this channel as a primary source for historical research or study.
By listening, you acknowledge that this content is designed to help you unwind, relax, and fall asleep.
Thank you for your understanding and support.